This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, there it is.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on the agenda. Back on there. First item on the agenda will be considered approval of the consent agenda items. Approved minutes from the May the 10th, 2021, and statement of the bills paid in the amount of $266,849.76.
I move to approve the consent agenda items, just amending the minutes a little bit. I noticed that in my comments, it just didn't include the harvester's update or the request for the presentation of street maintenance.
Second?
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the amendments given. Would the clerk please call roll?
Schreiber,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Kahar,
Yes.
Malat.
Yes.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda will be requests or comments from the public. Okay, if there are none, we'll move on to the next item. We're switching number 3 and number 4. So open your packet for number 4. Consider approval of business license applications for Liquor Express to be located at 9701 Call Drive.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, what's in front of you is a pretty standard business license. Typically, about 99% of the time, we handle those administratively in-house in the clerk's office, and Heather and Katie process those. This one's a little bit different. In our section 4.02.008, it states that applications for licenses for businesses related to, weapons, explosive, alcohol, drugs, or firearms shall be brought before the council for approval, specifically the governing body. So this will require the mayor to vote as well. And so that's what we're doing right now. We don't really see any issues with the application at this point from an administrative point of view. I know that they're working through some different planning things with the city manager and the city planner, mostly in relation to parking and landscaping. So I don't think there's any red flags there either. So the recommendation from staff would be to approve the issuance of the business license contingent on the planning standards being met as they have been communicated by staff. And we do have the applicant in the audience if you do have any questions for him.
Is this a chain store or just an individual owned property?
I do have multiple locations in Kansas City metropolitan area, but no, this is not a change. It's only my second venture when it comes to, Kansas.
And where's your other Kansas location?
I just recently built a new location on 3801 Leavenworth Road. But it's a gas station, a liquor store, and a restaurant.
Oh,
Just we built right at the intersection of 38th Street and Leavenworth Road. It's visible from 635 here coming down southbound.
do you have any plans to extend into a restaurant or anything along those lines here? Or would it just be the liquor store?
Well, no, I have done, I'm doing my second restaurant right now on the Leavenworth Road. It's a specialized thing, and I don't like to see any business opening and closing. So I have to put careful consideration and thoughts in it. So I'm going through that planning phase right now on Leavenworth Road. The restaurant is the only one that's not open right now. But hopefully I can do more in your city.
What are your hours on Sunday? In KCK right now.
It is mandated by the state of Kansas. We follow that. So I think they close at 11 o'clock. And they open up at noon on Sunday.
So I was contacted this week, and I guess Kansas has recently made a change to Sunday alcohol sales. I think that allows you and this was going to be brought up, so I'm glad that this is coming forward tonight, that changes that till I think 9 a.m. And are you familiar? Is it-
Yeah, they just recently, and I don't know if it's 9 or 10,
Right.
but if I recall right, it still requires a city amendment to its current ordinances. And we just, I mean, it just got passed. I'm not sure of all the details that
So,
would require a change.
so who contacted me is concerned about losing alcohol sales to other cities,
Right.
like on Chief Sunday
Right.
and other sporting events, because you have to wait until noon or whatever time it is on Sunday. So I'd like for us to look into that. Anything that we can help to have your business be successful. And I don't know that a couple hours earlier, especially if other cities around us are going with what the state
Right.
has made that change. I think we should be following what the state does. That's all.
What's a,
I appreciate it. We'll just follow whatever
Sure.
Lily told me.
what's a target opening date?
I don't have it because we have to do a major remodel inside. It used to be a service center. So we have to remove a lot of oil containers and properly dispose it all. We have to remove a lot of lifts that are there. There's a basement there where they store a lot of their oil and stuff. So we will make sure that we will properly dispose of all the equipment. I'm looking at about 3 months, maybe 4, until all that stuff is taken out of there.
Okay.
I would anticipate that so they've submitted their building permit and we asked for a few clarifications on the site plan specific. So as you know, there was a previous site plan relative to parking and things. So there was a few minor changes to that, and we made some comments and they've made a few changes. So I would anticipate that permit would be issued this week at the latest. I'm just not sure where it's at in process, but the last I saw, I think everything was current and we had either just sent the responses or were about to. So our planner was out today, so I can't give you an absolute, but the plans and everything were fine. I mean, there wasn't anything in them that caused any problems.
Is it typical that we do go one before the other, like this, or?
Well, with liquor licenses, because it's so state regulated, I would say it's not unusual because oftentimes somebody doesn't want to expend the dollars to start modifying the building if they can't get through the liquor licensing process. So I don't think it's really out of order in this particular case.
So Zach did say to make them contingent on those
Correct.
requirements being met.
Right. And again, I think that probably at this point, the comments that we had relative to planning have been addressed. There were some slight adjustments in parking, and we were worried about the width of the lanes. They actually took those parking places out. They, updated the ADA. They're making improvements to the garbage bin area. We wanted to make, it'd been damaged. It's a hard site to landscape, but there had been some requirements in the previous one with some landscaped, I wouldn't call them islands, but some landscaped areas. So we just wanted to clarify those things. So there was nothing on overall building permits. I mean, the building and, our building officials reviewed them and had no comments relative to the structural types pieces, any new walls or filling in the bays or any of that stuff. So it's really just minor site plan adjustments, and they have completed and submitted those back. And again, I think we're probably done. That doesn't have to go to the planning, none of that goes to the planning commission. It's just all administrative.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve the business license application for Liquor Express contingent on the group meeting the planning standards communicated by staff.
Second.
It has been moved and second to approve the business license application for Liquor Express to be located at 9701 Call Drive with the mentioned all modifications. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stipe,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Kahar,
Yes.
Malat.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome to Edwardsville.
Yes.
Okay, next item on the agenda will be consider 2020 financial statement and report of the city's independent certified public accountants, old business.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will make this one fairly quick. This item was before you previously. There was some, I think Ms. Kahar had not had an opportunity to fully review it and had a few questions. She and I did meet subsequently and kind of went through the audit. I would note also, and I don't know that hopefully it got sent to you since then or is in your packets, was the auditor's comment to management. I think there was some questions or concerns about receipts. And I just to verify with him, I mean, it really is a policy issue. So in our policy, it was never intended that we would have receipts for gasoline purchases. When we put that in, it had to do when we added our purchasing cards. So that was really where, so we, certain people have purchasing cards, they have to submit receipts because then we, one, verify that it's accurate. And then number two, it gives us the opportunity to charge it to the right department. So, those charges go to the right line item, the right department. I think the other comment had some comment about, paying of sales taxes. We certainly try not to do that, but I can tell you just, this past weekend when we were doing the cleanup day, I went to Dollar General, to pick up some water for us, and their machine was down and, they couldn't process the sales tax exemption. It was, 30, 40, 50 cents, whatever it was. We go ahead and buy what we need to get. And then we met with them and said, hey, this needs to get fixed so we can, get our tax exemption. So all those issues I think are being addressed or will be addressed. Probably we'll tweak our financial policy on the gasoline purchases, the vehicle gasoline purchases, bring that back for you in the future. Otherwise, we would recommend adoption of the audit as presented by the auditor.
Mike, could you just review, and I know some of this we reviewed last week, but the total debt of the city and how it's grown in the last few years, but then also the dates for when that debt's going to be falling off, and then what would be a healthy amount for our city?
Sure. So as you see, the debt has grown. Predominantly, that debt has grown because of road projects, 110th Street, primarily, and the sewer system. And note that even with the sewer system, though, fully funds the debt. So it shows up in your debt service, but it's paid for out of the sewer system. So the other one that shows up in those numbers is capital leases, right? So when we bought the fire trucks or we buy different things, about 90% of all the capital leases are paid for out of the special sales tax fund. So they never hit taxes at all. So, some of the things that you would look at overall. So yes, the debt has increased, but some of your ratios, such as your debt to valuation. So, right, as your value changes, where's your debt to that? And, we set at about 12%. So our debt ratio is about 12% of our total valuation. Very good. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised to see cities with 30%. So that's very fair. If you look at our mill levy, we generally set around 23, 24% of our total mill levy is allocated to debt. Again, if you kind of think about this in your own home, and you go buy a house or something, they're like, okay, here's your income and your house payments, taxes and insurance and your house payments shouldn't exceed about 40%. Well, it's a fairly general rule in local government. I mean, I would say, under 40, I'd probably start having concerns if we were in the 35% range, but at 24% of our mill levy dedicated to debt service, I think that's a very reasonable number to be. Overall, our debt service, this is kind of our peak year, if you remember. And then as we go forward, our debt service goes down, overall debt service. Now, will we have to issue future debt? Absolutely. We know we have, capital projects coming up. So, but overall, our debt service ratios are, is good or better than you would probably find in most communities or recommended through the Government Finance Officers Association.
One
Happy
other
to answer
thing
any
I thought would be really helpful, if you wouldn't mind, it shouldn't take very long, is just explaining the difference between the general fund and then the cash balance.
Sure. So I would refer you to page, and I don't know if you all brought your audits with you, but so page 3 is of an audit, and it's pretty much true in all audits, maybe on a different page, but there's always what they call a summary of statement receipts, expenditures, and unencumbered cash. And I would note that we are a cash basis state, so we report on cash. Most states use what's called GAAP, or generally accepted accounting principles. And as you know, every year we come to you and we ask for a waiver of GAAP. Now, that doesn't mean we don't follow proper accounting procedures and processes. It's just how it's reported. So when you look at our summary, we have about, let's see, at the bottom line, we have around $7.3 million in cash. Now, that sounds good, but what you really want to look at is your general fund, because your general fund is really where your operations are at. So to give you a good example of why you want to look at the general fund unencumbered cash balance versus the total, and some of y'all have heard this before, so I apologize, but when I came here in 2007, we had about $5 million in the bank. Everybody's going, woo, we got $5 million in the bank. We had issued $5.2 million in debt. Now remember, you're issuing debt to build projects. So the money that's in your capital project fund, which in our case, that's over $3-4 million is setting in capital project, that money's going to get spent. So you won't have that cash in the bank in the future. So the ones you really want to pay attention to, again, is general fund. After you're paying police, fire, admin, parks, all those types of things. You want to watch your utility funds, your sewer and solid waste, right? You want to make sure that there's proper reserves in those areas. Most of the rest, you're not as concerned. You always want to have some balance in there. You want balance in your bond and interest fund, not because we don't know what we're going to pay in debt, but you could have a situation where tax payments don't come in or don't come in, on the time frame you think they're going to come in when your debt payments due. Because when your debt payments due, your debt payments due. So, right. So overall, you see we have positive balances throughout all of our accounts. And we've maintained that for years. Again, I hate to go back, but in 2007 we had a negative 277,000, but we had $5 million in the bank. That is not where you want to be ever. And so I think overall our financials are in excellent shape. Again, there's lots of ratios on what the general fund should be, but we like to keep it around that 15 to 18% of available cash, which is unencumbered. Right, unencumbered cash to what you might expect your expenditures to be in that given year, right? Something such as the pandemic, right? You all of a sudden had 2.5 months with no revenues coming in from your casino. You want to be prepared for that, or if you had a natural disaster or any number of other things. So we're right in all of those ratios. Hopefully that answers that.
Mike, there's a comment, I think is number 4. Regarding a delinquent or a late bond payment?
Correct. So, and that's been corrected. So what happens is each year, so the treasurer, the state treasurer is the paying agent for bonds. And we have to transfer the funds from our bank to the treasurers at least 20 days prior. And we submitted one about 18 days prior. So we were behind. It's a statutory violation. We've got that worked out because they're all done through, ACH type transfers. So just simply, we didn't process it Monday when we should have done it a Friday type of situation. But we've put in some additional follow-ups and, ticklers on calendars to make sure we get that done in the future.
Thank you.
I move to accept the 2020 financial statements and report of independent certified public accountants prepared by Gordon CPA.
It has been moved and seconded to accept the financial statement report of the city's independent certified public accountants. Would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Cahar,
Yes.
Malott.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda, consider city manager's recommendation regarding city's compensation plan and adoption of resolution 2021-06 related to the same.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I'm not going to read all the information that I sent you in the packet. It has, a lot more detail as far as individual numbers, but I do want to give you an overview. Most of this you've probably seen before. Oh, okay, and I did give you for the two proposals an update. Fundamentally, what happened there was on the exempt side, we forgot to build in the COLA adjustment that we had done previously. So just the numbers were wrong. It now lines up with our pay plan, the starting on our current pay plan. So I'm trying to, I was going to say, it's that one. I was going to say I was changed. All right. So you'll remember that I came before you about a month and a half ago. And at that time, I kind of gave you some broad information. Generally, the council said we'd like to have some further information, a little bit more in depth. And that's what we hope to provide you tonight. First of all, our current compensation plan was done back in 2011 by McGrath Consulting. So they're a professional company. They also helped do our employee handbook and did some work with this when we implemented the fire EMS based service. So that's kind of their specialties. The plan that was put in place was a grade and step plan. So again, you have grades, in our case, A through Z, and then you have steps 1 through whatever, and we'll go into what those breakdowns are. Again, we have 26 grades. We currently have 7 steps. When it was first done, it was 5 steps. The intention then was that the top steps would be about market pay, but it was also assumed we would keep it up over the use of COLAs over years. And as you know, that hasn't happened. So what I'm doing tonight, and again, you have a lot of information in your packet, but we really have 4 cities that we're comparing. And we picked these cities because they've all recently, within the last 2 years, done a formal plan. That is, they hired a third-party company. 2 of them used what is now known as Baker Tilly. The other one used Logic, which just got finished. I mean, just literally got finished this week, which was Tonganoxie. I think they give a good view of our plan compares to others, and we find this across the metro. So there's nothing we're telling you that's unusual. Matter of fact, Logic called us and said, "Why are you sure you only have 7 steps, and why?" And so so even the professionals kind of questioned our format of it. Now that's just part of the way it goes. So in Edwardsville, again, we have 26 grades. We label them A to Z. They can be labeled any way you want. Between grades is 5%. We do 3% steps, and so our total range is about 19%. So from the lowest to the highest, that range is 19%. Like most of the cities, you probably have anywhere from half to 2/3 of your grades are used, and kind of number of titles to positions is somewhere around that half to, around half typically. We moved to Baser, our neighbor to the north. They use what's known as a mid, and max plan. So they don't use steps. So they set the pay plan, say here's the min, the mid, and the max. Annually, when they approve the budget, they say to the administrator or the staff, we're going to fund X% on raises, and then they move people within those ranges. If they hire somebody in, right, they may hire them in somewhere between min and mid, whatever they decide to do. So it's a little bit more open. They use 25 grades. Their grades are separated by 6%. So it goes up a little bit quicker than ours, their range is 45%, so more than double what our range is. So, and you'll see this in a minute when somebody's near the max in our group, they're not to the min of these other, or not to the mid on these other groups. Yep.
Not to interrupt there.
Sure.
So what is the pro and the con of that being so different than ours? You know, 45-degree spread or 45% spread versus, I think, what was ours? 26?
19.
So what is that?
Well, what it means is there are people that cap out real quick and they can go to other places and continue their employment journeys.
On our current.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, I'll come through Bonner Springs. They use basically the same plan like us. That is, they use a grade and step plan, 26 steps. Again, they use 6%. If you do 13 steps, it works out to 42.6% range. So, I mean, take what you want. And then Tonganoxie, which was the most recent one. Again, it was just completed this past week. They shortened up their grades. And then, as you can see, they do 7.5% for the first 10 grades and 9% for the next 10. So if you're moving up grades, you're moving up pretty quick. And their range is 50%. So they're kind of at the top end of what most cities are using for ranges. I will note that their police and fire, they use separate ranges for them. They just created different. What they decided on the police side, they wanted to, so most of their positions, they were looking to be at about the midpoint for their positions. With police, they wanted to be at 75%. And fire, again, they have a limited fire department at about 60%. And they made a decision that generally fire, which is probably true, and you'll see why it's hard to get a lot of data on fire because they're so different. Generally, fire will be one grade below, or in their case, they use 5% less for their fire to their police position. So they said a police officer is this and a firefighter is 5% less. So a corporal is this. They don't really have other positions in their fire department. I mean, they basically have firefighters, and then they have a fire captain, and then they have a deputy and fire chief, right? They're a lot smaller in their operations than we are. But they do separate it out. Again, I think I showed you this before. If you look across the state here, and if you look in Missouri, you see the same thing. The average is around a 45% grade. You see there anywhere from 35 to 50. So again, 50% would be really at the top of what most cities are doing. Again, 45 is more the average. If you do 13 steps, you're at 43%. Yes, sir.
Which of these cities is the population most reflected in ours? Which one would?
Well, it can be a little hard to I mean, all of these cities that we used here, because these came out of what's called the CSS, which is done by Mark. They kind of break them up by under 25 and over 25. So we looked at the over 25, but that's generally your Shawnees, your Lenexas, your UGs, we didn't look out to Topeka and Wichita and Salina or places like that. We stayed here locally. So I can't tell you I know all of these populations, but they run anywhere, from our size up to probably 20,000. I mean, Prairie Village is probably the largest of this group here. Spring Hill may be one of the fastest growing in this group. Gardner is up there too. I think Gardner's around 15,000. I don't know the exact population. And again, this is just to show, not in the metro, no. But I wouldn't say pay is based on population. Pay is based on market, pay is based on workload. So I don't think our workload's different from a lot of these communities or other communities in the area. And fire is fire, police. I mean, our workload probably in some cases is higher than a number of these cities. I bet our workload's greater than Roland Park.
Well, when you're discussing fire and police, I agree, but would you feel the same for public works from the cities? Like we're looking at Lawrence and they have a lot more.
And again, we're not trying to compare our pay there. We're just showing you ranges. So there's nothing in what I'm showing you that talks to what Lawrence is paying their people.
is
But
that
I can
what
tell
we're
you, we've had
communicating?
people go to work in Lawrence.
No, and I understand that, but when we're looking at the range, that's one reason that I think a couple of us had asked for like a work session before us, because when we're looking at this, it's so important that we do it right. You know, we
Yeah.
want to get this right for our folks. And while we're looking at range, and that's so important, what a lot of our people, I think, are looking at is pay, the bottom dollar. And so maybe you'll be getting to that
Yeah,
soon. But I
yeah,
think
that's where we're
really
going
important.
next.
Okay.
So, again, this is just to give you, kind of laying out the problem for, most of our people are moving towards the top end of our pay ranges, right? So it gets to pay. What happens? You got 11 people that are already there. You got another 6 that are going to be there at the end of this year. So, a third of your workforce won't get any pay increases, is basically what you're saying. What we also find is, because at the bottom, we're not competitive in a lot of places, so we have to hire people at step 3 or 4. So they don't even get 7 steps. They get 3 or 4, because that's where we're having to hire them at. I mean, that's what the market says. So these 4 positions are out of the same information I gave you. You can pick any positions, and I'd be happy to tell you what those others. But these are positions that we know are common, right? Most cities have them. So the top one, again, is Edwardsville. We use a 7-step plan. So what I did here, step 1, right? Everybody has a step 1. Our midpoint is step 4. The others is basically a midpoint or step 7. And the max is the max, right? For us, that's 7. So if I take a maintenance worker, they're going to max out at 38,709. But if they worked in Basehor, Bonner Springs, or Tonganoxie, they would make as much or more money at the midpoint than they can ever make here. And while in this particular position, our minimum, we're right on target, right? So we've hired public works people, right? And we're able to hire them at 1s and 2s because the market says that's where it's at. But we got to have a pay system. If I moved to police officer, and every city is hiring police officers, right? I mean, we're seeing people leave the profession as much as we're seeing people move from, it's not always somebody's leaving to go to another city, but they're certainly leaving the profession. And in some cases, they're leaving the profession because they can make more money in a safer environment. I mean, we know that for at least 2 of the people we've lost, right? They left law enforcement, but they also left because they could be better compensated. But again, these are what the pay is. So Edwardsville, our minimum pay is $43,451. I can go to Basehor and I can make almost $4,000 more. I could go to Bonner Springs, I'm going to make around $3,000 more, and about the same for Tonga. And that's the market we compete with, right? I mean, we have people, and that's what they're paying at minimum. And they may be paying more than that if they, their pay plan, they say, hey, we're going to move you up. We're going to start you at step 2, 3, or 4. And again, remember, the pay plan is about the plan and not about the individual person in their pay, but it's about the longevity of their pay, right? So I can't tell you, employee A is at this, employee B is that. I mean, when we hire employees in police department, if they have never gone to the academy, they're going to start at a different pace point than I bring somebody in that's got 5 years of experience or 3 years of experience, right? I mean, because they're already certified, we don't have to send them to the academy. So, right, those people we may bring in at our current step 3 or 4.
But would we be bringing everyone in with the same experience at the same pay?
Roughly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so if they're new, never worked, they're going to come in at the same place. If they've got, certain experiences, then they're going to generally come in pretty much at the same level, right? But I'll note again, our max pay for a police officer is just over almost 52,000, right? They can make more than that at the midpoint by several thousand, and they can make almost $15,000 to $17,000 more at any of these 3 cities. And our population may be less than a Basehor or Bonner Springs, certainly not, I don't think so, from Tonga, but we should be competing with those cities easily. I mean, if you want to take Lenexa out of the mix, or you want to take a Shawnee out of the mix, I can live with that, but we should be able to compete with these cities on our pay. I'll move to firefighter, and I'll tell you, firefighter is a challenging one. And here's why. We're the only place that, so in this region, most fire departments do not run EMS services, right? So we do, the Unified Government does, Bonner Springs does, but right, Leavenworth County, there's Leavenworth County EMS, Miami County EMS, et cetera. Now, if you move away from here or you get to the Missouri side, it's more typical of fire EMS in the same area. And I'm not going to go back to all the reasons we did or didn't do it, but I think what you can see here is that for our firefighters, we do pretty well at the beginning step. And we do a little bit different with the firefighters. So right now they're in grade F when they first start with us. And that's kind of their training period. So they may have come here, they've got their certifications, but a lot about fire has to do about getting out there, doing it, right? I mean, going to that first fire or doing those medical calls or, so on and so forth. And so some of that takes experience. So we have a year probationary period with the fire department and actually with the police department as well. So again, we the first 2 grades, and then they step up to the next grade, which is G. And that's why you see on the minimum 2 different numbers. Now, again, if we hired somebody that was a firefighter, fully certified with experience, we would start them off at that 43 number versus 41. But we cap out at about 51. And while that may look somewhat fair in that range, I think, first of all, you have to understand that Fairmont Township is predominantly a volunteer fire department, right? So they keep 1 or 2 people on board. They don't have to be EMT certified. They don't run medical calls necessarily. I mean, if it's a car wreck or whatever, they go, but they're not running first line medical calls, right? So their people aren't getting that ongoing training from there. Bonner Springs has no paid firefighter. So what you're seeing there, that's what they pay an EMT. So, right, they're on the ambulance and they're an EMT. If you look at what they pay their paramedics, so their system right now, basically, I think, Chief, correct me, they have about 7 people. So they have a full-time assistant chief who runs their EMS department. Then they have 3 paramedics and 3 EMTs. That's how they keep an ALS service. Their paramedics start at $49,500 and they cap out at $70,500.
So they don't have firefighters, is that what you're saying?
They are not firefighters. I mean, there's some of their people that may be volunteer firefighters, but they don't do paid firefighters, right? So
they're volunteer fires, but they pay their EMTs.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So probably in reality, the one closest to us, and even that's not quite the same in this particular scenario, right? And again, I just kept our cities the same. So Tonganoxie, so they maintain a fire department with 2 people on each day. So basically they man a truck each day with 2 people. Again, they don't run, they do run first responders. So they're not transporting people. They don't run paramedics. So, they don't have paramedics on their staff. Now, somebody may be paramedic, but just because you hold a paramedic license doesn't mean you can do paramedic services, right? Your service has to be serviced, at a paramedic level, like our service. So it's hard, but again, I would say if I compare just there, we're not near the top end for a firefighter EMT in their service. Again, they have a captain and a firefighter EMT on each shift. That's what they have. So I didn't even show you a captain. I'm just firefighter. The guy is on the truck, driving the truck, right? So, it's a hard comparison. Firefighters are just hard because of the way we have a lot of fire districts, consolidated fire districts, cities that do, a Shawnee or Lenexa, they run fire. They also, Lenexa runs EMS services, but the ambulance is provided again by in that particular situation from Johnson County, Medac, right? So a little bit harder to do. And then the last one, and again, I use these 4 because these are the 4 I put in the report, but I think this shows you what happens at our higher positions. Public Works Director, and I'm sure Dusty likes these numbers, but you know, our maximum pay is below the minimum for Base or Bonner Springs and just slightly above Tonganoxie. I mean, these are just the numbers. I mean, and you can go pick whatever group of cities you want to, you know, in the region. I mean, we can't go compare ourselves with a 4,000 population city in Western Kansas because it's not, you know, there's just not even the same scenario because our people, when we're hiring them and when they're here, right, they have lots of choices in a metropolitan area. It just goes with it. So my recommendation is fairly simple. The easiest thing to do is to increase our compensation plan by adding the 6 additional steps, right? That will put us in the market. Will we be the highest in the market? No. We'll be average in the market. What percentage of what?
Well, we were at 19 and the other ones were at 40.
About 42, just like Bonner would be 42% would be the range.
One thing that I believe Margaret had brought up before when she had mentioned asking for a work session was splitting up the
Right.
salary from hourly department heads from the positions that we're having more turnover in and we're losing employees to other cities. And I feel like that would be beneficial. And I don't know if Margaret still feels the same way, but I feel like that was a really, really good suggestion. So we can actually look at, okay, where are we losing people? How's fire doing? What are the fire needs? How are the police doing the police needs? And kind of break that up and see where are those individual departments having the most turnover? What can we do to address those? And really dig into it some more and make sure that our solution is going to be one that really works and really sticks for the long term.
Well,
that
is why I did the 2 proposals. So the first proposal keeps a standard step and grade. The second proposal basically says you're non-exempt or step and grade and you're exempt or on a mid, and max. That's exactly why that is put forward. The range is the same. The range is the same.
Great point, Carol, because we don't know.
Right.
We don't know the exit interviews you do.
Right.
We don't know the information that's presented. We don't know where the struggles are, where the reasonings behind it. So
Right.
we have to rely on you to.
Sure. Well,
tell us
and
what
again,
we need the best.
I think we need to remember we're talking about the plan and not individual pay. Right. I mean, in the sense of we're not talking about what anybody in this room necessarily gets paid because their pay is based on, you know, a step and grade plan basically builds in longevity, right? That's what it does. And so each year we come to you and we say, here's our, you know, we have a pay plan. Here's the pay plan. We're recommending that we do a step increase this year or not do a step increase. We're recommending a COLA adjustment or not do a COLA adjustment, right? The COLA just keeps the pay plan in the market, right? So if cost of living is going up, you know, 4%, you may have to do a cost of living adjustment along with steps that year, because the step is really what you're doing to say, you've been here, you're a good employee, we want you to stay here. This is your incentive. COLA is really about what's going on in the economy, right? And we may not do COLAs every year. I think my suggestion is, I think we look at COLAs like on an every other year basis. Now there's good and bad to that, right? Then every other year, you might have to do a bigger increase. The good about that is it lets the organization and revenue streams and growth catch up with you, right? So if you're building and growing, you have a chance for that to come on to the tax rolls, come onto the sales tax rolls, et cetera, before you know, make that adjustment in the pay to the market. But again, I don't know that there's anything else I could really provide to this group to say, we are not competing on our pay plan in the market. I mean, right. I mean, I've looked at data from, you know, tons of places. And I mean, it's the same consistent situation, right? It's really about our pay plan being capped out. Now, we may have employees, right? And that kind of falls back to me. It's like, okay, is this employee at the right grade? right? So is the public works director at the right grade, or the fire chief, or the police chief, or the maintenance worker, or the parks and rec order? You know, they're at a D and they should be at an E, right? We look at that kind of on an ongoing basis if we see that our a position is getting out of whack, and we include that in the budget, right? We
Well,
do
that's
that with
something that I had a question about too, and that's again
Right.
why I feel like a work session would be so valuable.
Right.
Is instead of leaving that up to something so subjective, oh well, this one individual employee should be at this grade, wouldn't it be more beneficial to say, okay, when an officer's been on for 3 years, they're getting this raise. When an officer's been on for 5 years or 7 years, or a firefighter, that way they know what to plan on and count on. And yeah, the COLA might change depending on cost of living, because that's what it is cost of living.
Right.
But I just feel like there's some things that
Well,
we might be able to discuss that might serve our people.
But that's what the step does. I mean, the step says to that police officer, you're starting here, and you know, unless the council, right? I mean, it's part of, you can't say that we're going to give you a pay raise every year for the rest of your time here. I mean, you can't financially, I would not come to you and say, let's guarantee everybody gets a pay raise forever, because we don't know what the financial future may bring to us. So the cop, I mean, you know, under this scenario, whether it's the policeman, the fireman, the public works guy, the parks guy, the whoever, under step and grade, they know, hey, I'm at step 2 next year. And we say this in every offer letter, right? Your pay, here's your pay. And they generally have a 6-month probationary period. So often they start at, say, step 1, at 6 months, they go to 2. And then after that, it's the next step is C, but it's dependent upon the adoption of the annual budget. I mean,
Could
it's
you
really.
explain then what you were saying about maybe somebody is at this level, but then you need to move them?
No,
to
I'm saying that you may have over time have positions. So, right, I gave you a list of all the other cities and their positions, right? So when I look at maintenance worker, Edwardsville, Bonner Springs, Tonganoxie, their worker, you know, we use A to their 4. I mean, you could rename them, it doesn't matter. But our maintenance workers are paid in the same pay grade as maintenance workers in other cities. Our police officers are generally paid in the same grade as other cities. You may have, you know, not every city has the same jobs as we have. So I'll use this one as an example, right? So if I look at code enforcement officer, CSO code enforcement officer, in, you know, Tonganoxie, that's at a pay grade 6. But remember, they grow their grades at 7.5%. We put that person at D, and Bonner Springs puts that one at an A. I'm not saying we would change them, but that might be one where you look at and go, okay, are they in the right grade? But to do that, you have to look at what their pay is. So our pay grade D is competitive to grade 6 in Tonganoxie, then there's no change, right? We don't really care what the letter is next to it, right? I mean, that's just a way to structure it. I mean, we could call it 1, 2, 3, 4, and we could create, you know, most of these cities, what they do, their first 3 steps are their part-time people. We just haven't done that. I mean, we can add them, but it's a numbering. I mean, they have 26 grades or they not. So is a cop in Edwardsville being compensated the way cops are in these other communities? And do they have the same opportunity to progress through their career? Oh, right, police officer, excuse me. But they may, right, but that police officer, maybe they're here 6, 7 years and now they become a master patrol officer or a detective or a sergeant, right? I mean, what you would like is people are going to work here and have opportunities to promote, right?
Yeah.
But what you don't want to do is have them spend 3 or 4 years here and then go to some other city where they can promote. And that happens. I'm not saying that's all the time. We don't have massive turnover, right? I mean, it's not like we have 70% turnover. I don't think we're telling anybody a secret there, but we don't want that either. So again, I think really the the simplest place is to add these 6 steps. If you want to break the pay plan between exempt and non-exempt, that's fine. It works out the same relative to the range and to the grades. If you really want to totally redo the pay plan, then I think your option's to hire a third-party group and have them do that, and you're looking at $15,000. I'm just that, right? And I don't think we need that. I think we have all the data we need. We're getting the benefit of looking at other cities who have gone out and hired professional groups, and that's what we're doing. We can change the letters. You don't want to call it Roman numeral 1, you want it to be 1, or you want A to be D. It doesn't really matter. But our positions, for the most part, line up. Right? We may have a couple, probably more at the department head levels than we do at the exempt levels, to be quite, or non-exempt levels. But I don't think we have anybody that's so far out, right? They're at a G and they should be at an X or something like that. It may be, maybe they need to be up a grade, right? I will tell you, I think a little bit of that, and I see some of our friends from the fire department. I think in the fire department, that's an area where we've had that challenge. We've kind of fixed the firefighter part, right? We do give a stipend for paramedics, but it's that in between, right? So our driver operator or lieutenant or whatever kind of, that's the one, we don't have any separation there, and we probably need to build that back into the system. But
So do we have in the fire department
right.
a driver position?
Yes. But what we did on pay, right, we were way behind on, so what happened is we were so far behind on the firefighter, we moved firefighters up into that same pay grade as driver operators. We need to add driver operators up.
So we kind of eliminated that.
We haven't eliminated, one of the things is you want to try to have your, we want to have, so a couple of things we do in the fire department. So our driver operators receive a captain stipend, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of doing out of class pay every time somebody moves, and we effectively do the same thing in the police department with the MPO, you get paid on every paycheck a certain amount of money, right? And if we call on you to be the captain for a couple hours or a shift, you've already been compensated. Now, if you're got to be the captain for months, like we've had recently with Dan Johnson being out, and we fill that, then we pay that at an out of class, right? We pay them because now they're the captain, they're the full-time captain for months or weeks and months, then we do that. We still have the position, but the position is in the same pay grade as it is with firefighters. We give a stipend for paramedics, right? So
there's so few positions in a fire department.
That's, yeah.
That are you can reach, and
right.
I think taking away a driver position.
Right.
Is not right.
No.
We only had X amount of dollars to work with this year within the budget that the council approved. And I had to balance between, do we bring 9 up to keep 9 from leaving? We've had 3 leaves in the last 12 months of the pandemic for other agencies with more money compared to 3 drivers that I had to sit there and say, I know where you're at, and I can only continue to work with the city manager to get this readjusted. And we only had X amount of dollars to work with, so I had to sit there and balance 9 or 3. 9 keeps us from losing a lot of personnel at the lower grade that go over here across the river with Johnson County, $12,000 to $14,000 more a year. 3 experienced tenured drivers that are here that have no desire really to go looking, start someplace else because they like it. I had to sit there and make that decision and that call, sit there and say, where can we apply money at to stop the turnover problem, to try to bring us more market line and work over the next year or 2 to bring it back in the market line all the way through the organization.
So we need to budget more in the fire department to make that difference. Is that what Chief Whittam, would that solve that?
What fixes that?
This next budget cycle, based off of this plan, and how it's all adjusted out.
So the budget that we're setting now will correct
The
that.
budget for 2022, if approved, will already have where our funds are reallocated. That position makes a grade or step jump in comparison with the pay plan
Mhm.
that is appropriate for that position. An example, one of my drivers is maxed out at the top of his pay scale, been there for 2 years.
Okay.
So every year he gets 1.5%. The first check of the year says, here you go. The problem is for me to move a grade to give him an increase, I have to move him 2 steps further down to get him in the midpoint. Because we are so compact in those first 2 positions. And over the time, we have to sit there and readjust and work within a lot of funds the council gives us. And again, I can only do so much with the amount of dollars we have to spread that out and try to sit there and balance it out to fill the immediate need to keep us tenable on the entry side, and as well try to keep tenured long-term employees present by going up on that side.
And these are things that I feel like we need to be able to dig into.
No, you're right.
And really find out, like Chief Whittam, I didn't know that they were in a budget crunch before just now. And so what I would like to do, and I don't want to waste anyone's time or anything. I just feel like this is really important. And I know you said we didn't have a high turnover, but to me, 3 is a high turnover
Oh,
when we have 17. And so I think it's worth taking the time and doing a workshop or a work session and dig into, okay, fire, what are your needs? Look at a fire pay plan, not anyone in particular, but say, okay, this is where we're starting. This is what it's going to do to the budget, because we need to look at that. And yes, I know we have to approve it every year, but we would like to. And so we need to look at financially, what'll that be? Public Works, how are your guys doing? What's our turnover look like? Where are we, and really get into the departments and not to micromanage it, but to make sure that when we're doing this, that we're resolving the issues that are coming up.
But I'm just saying, but I don't see the plan change, right? What you're talking about, and I agree, right? I mean, we're in 100% agreement here, right? Is we were so far down on the firefighter range. It was the firefighters we moved. We didn't take the drivers and do away with them. Now, when you talk about budget, I mean, I think every year when we come here and talk about the budget and the dollars and the allocations, I mean, pay and salaries is always one of our discussions, not necessarily on individual. But, what we did was we moved our firefighters, literally, they used to be at E, and we put in this first step at F, so those new ones come in at F, and then they move to G. We need to move the G being the driver operators up. But as Mr. Whittam said, when you only have a 7-step plan, in order to give them any change, and this is throughout. If I have a person at step 7, I've got to move them up at least 2 grades and move them to step 5. So what happens? 2 years, they're capped out.
And I completely understand what you're saying, but we're missing a couple of parts still, and that is when we move them up, how do we need to adjust the budget over the next year? What's that going to reflect? What is it going to look like in 5 years? So we can start planning now to make sure we're taking care of them in the long run.
Sure.
And that's one thing that I didn't see in the presentation, that I think that when we're adopting this, we need to really dig into and make sure we have that information so we can plan accordingly.
As I understand it, though, where you're going is the budget workshop and not this.
Well, it's this so that we see
No,
how does
no,
this affect the
this-
budget? Because we're out of money to
No,
do it.
the
Well,
budget
it's not-
affects the budget, not the compensation.
I don't think it's out of budget. It's right. Every year we have limitations on budget. I mean, if
Then why didn't it come up in the budget so that we weren't eliminating that and in the?
well, we didn't eliminate. I mean, first of all, we haven't eliminated any position.
Okay.
Nobody got pay cuts, pay reductions, anything to do with. We've been talking about being capped out and having large numbers of people for a decade because of this plan, because of that 7 steps. Or I mean, you have 11 of your 49 positions, and you're going to have 17 by the end of this year. So 17 people in 2022 without a change in the plan, do nothing else but change the plan. You're going to have 17 people out of 49 will not get a pay raise. That's fundamentally what.
Right.
And so the plan, I mean, again, moving a position in the plan is certainly a discussion. And the fire department is that, I mean, really the position in the fire department is looking at the driver operator. But we also have to look at that. What's the market for driver operators and lieutenants? It's a hard one to get great data on, to be quite honest. I mean, you have to look broader than you do. I mean, I hate to say it, there's lots of information about cops. Go to any city right now and Google job openings, police officer, and you'll find it. I mean, right, because every city's doing it. And the fire services overall, people tend to come into the fire service and stay with the service that they're at. Not 100%, but it's far more of a stable workforce than I would say police officers. And not that police have big, great turnovers. So we need to look at the position, but you got to have the pay plan in place to move it to. But I have to also look is if I'm moving the driver operator to say H or I, well, who else is in that same pay grade and what is that market? So let's just say I move the driver operator up and in that same pay grade is Parks and Rec coordinator. How does that compare? Or should another position come up with them, right? I mean, we're always looking at that market. And I'm just summarizing lots and lots of data. And that's the thing. We have moved people over the years, right? I mean, I have moved people in the pay plan because that's part of the manager's job and the department head job, right? We have this plan and we know, and we can look at the market and say, hey, this particular job is not in the market. We need to make those adjustments and it has a budget impact. And we know that, and we stay within our budget or come in and say we need to increase it. And we've done that in the past when we moved everybody, right? We moved everybody up a grade, effectively the entire workforce. We did that 5 years ago, I guess it was. So again, I'm trying to focus on the plan, and we can look at the driver operator and come back and say, this is where we believe this position should be in this pay plan. That's not, I shouldn't say it's not a challenge, but that's not the plan. That doesn't have anything to do with the plan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was to that point, and kind of bringing it back out to that 30,000 foot view, adopting this resolution, making these adjustments to the pay plan doesn't change our budget in 2020, and it doesn't change our budget for 2021 or for 2022. Nobody's pay will get adjusted by change at this tonight by making any changes that we're talking about. That is done, like we said, at the budget process where we break down, X% of the general fund is allocated to payroll. We're recommending 1.5% COLA and then to move everybody up or whatever it ends up being. But all this does is gives us that room for those 17 individuals who are going to be topping out, tells them that there's room to grow here and you're not stunted at where you're at right now if there's no other adjustments made. So I just don't want to lose sight of the fact that we're getting really in the weeds on different positions, which is a valuable conversation to have. But as it relates to this resolution, this doesn't materially change any of the finances in this budget year or for next budget year until this body makes that decision as part of the budget process.
I have a couple of comments. One is it's kind of refreshing to be able to have this conversation.
Right.
Because there's been a lot of years we couldn't.
It's true.
The opportunity wasn't there to have the conversation. So in order for them to develop a budget for this coming year, they need a plan. And so this plan will enable them to make a budget, to put people, they can sit down, they say, okay, I want to put this person, this, we can, and one of the beautiful things, we've got fantastic directors and chiefs in our city, and that's their responsibility, is to figure out how to keep people, who they want to keep, and how they want to compensate them, what they've got to recruit and so forth. And so that's why we pay them to do that. I hate to get so far into the weed because I don't know the nuances of every department and every position. And these guys are interacting with other police and fire departments and public works all over the city. And so I have a real hesitancy about diving too deep into all the minutia of which position goes into which class and all that kind of stuff. It kind of bothers me to get involved in that conversation because you guys are the expert at that. This just gives you the tool to budget for the next year on how to compensate people in a proper way. And trust me, we're going to see a bump in the budget in order to keep these people and to compensate them in a competitive way. And that's always been a high priority for me is I want quality people in our city. Our citizens deserve to be served by the highest quality people. And our highest quality people need to be compensated as if they went, so we could compete with the rest of this metropolitan area. And so I have great appreciation for those who have kind of hung through for some of the drivers that kind of took a hit for a year so that we could have the other 9 people get a little bit more adjusted. So my faith is in the leadership of the departments and not having to get into the minutia of each position and whether a driver is compensated right or not. I trust Chief Whittam.
And we did provide in your packet 2 things. So all of our position classifications are listed there by title, by grade, right? So what department they're in, what their title is, what their grade is. And then we also did that comparison of the other cities, right? Again, where the fire department is a little more challenging in the sense of getting data that is valuable in comparison a city that truly provides full service, right? So in that sense, I mean, we are, providing emergency medical care as an ALS system. That means people on the fire truck, people in the ambulance, people on a brush truck, right? I mean, it's a different service level than, and again, these other cities do a great job, but that's a different service level than a Tonganoxie. It's even a different service level than Shawnee. Shawnee doesn't run an EMS service. They may have a big fire department, right? And they certainly do first responders, but they don't go on every medical call, right? They don't have to move people over and say, today you're in the medical group here and you're going to respond. All of our people can move over. And if I had my druthers, every person in our department, if every person was a paramedic in our department, I would be happy with that. Does it cost more money? Absolutely. But right, it gets to that service level. If somebody needs help, we want to make sure, again, I don't care what department, we want to make sure that they've got the quality of services coming to them and the people are well trained, well equipped, well paid. I understand we can't, right? We're not going to be the high payer in Kansas or the metro area, but we need to be competitive. And again, I think Mr. Adams hit it on the head. This gives us the boundary, the plan to say we're going to have 13 steps. And if you want it to be an all step and grade plan, or you want it to be divided between exempt and non-exempt, either one of those, quite honestly, works fine. That's the boundaries of the plan. As we go into the budget process here shortly, right, we can look and say, hey, now we have this plan, now we have these studies, we think this position and this position might need to be adjusted, right? I mean, our planner may be one of those that needs to be adjusted, but right, he came in, he's young, he didn't have a lot of experience, but if I look at the market, we're probably, he's probably under a little bit, but he's fairly new here too. So, we're not going to move him to step 7, right? But I think for the most part, 90% of our jobs are in the right, maybe 95% are in the right grade. They're in the right place. There's 2 or 3 of them out there that need to adjust. Driver operator is one of those. Again, I think the planner may be one of those. Our wastewater worker, I mean, that's a tough one because, we're a 1-person wastewater department and so there's a few of those, but for the most part, we're a pretty good place. If we really have places that need to be shifted, it's probably at your department head levels, as you saw. That's where we have the biggest gap at the top end. And I know that's always the hard one, to authorize. But I mean, again, they probably are the ones that also have the ability with the greatest movement too, right? To go from here to somewhere else. I'm not saying they should or won't, but I mean, they generally have that opportunity to do that. Because if I'm public works director here and the public works director opens up in Spring Hill and they're paying $20,000 more a year for somewhat the same job, and it's a pretty easy relocate for me, why would I not consider that necessarily, right? I mean, we want to keep them here. So that's my 2 cents. Again, I think, in summary, the resolution does exactly what Mr. Adams said. It adds the steps to build the plan, and we can move forward with the compensation piece of individuals. I don't know what else in reality. I mean, I don't know what more data or what data I would bring to you. And that's why I say, I think if it's the data we don't think is adequate, then I think you need to set aside $15,000 and hire an outside firm to do it. My 2 cents worth.
So we're looking at a 42% instead of a 19%. So how much, let's assume, because we need to move people to where they need to be.
Right.
In next year, if we move them up next budget year,
Yeah.
how does that affect the budget? In 5 years, if we move up everyone according to what you would suggest,
Right.
how does that affect the budget, and where do we need to move things around to make that work?
And I don't know that you can answer that question. Here's why. People don't necessarily stay just in the one position. You're still going to have some turnover. I mean, if you're going to just say 3%, I can tell you over the last 5 years, we've gone more than 3% in our total personnel, in our payroll
based
cost.
on
Because
history, like if you're managing something based on history, you can kind of tell based on history how people are going to move up, how things are going to transpire. And so, that's what I had been asking for is how do we I know we're not going to adjust the budget from last year, but we need to prepare and plan accordingly for the future to make sure that this is not an ongoing issue. So what I'd like to see is those numbers, and this is our estimate if everybody stays where they're at, but promotes accordingly. So we're not losing, we're not hiring new. This is how it'll affect our budget. And I'd like to hear how this would be resolved with the driver issue in the fire department. And I'd like to hear if there are issues similar to that in the police department that we need to make sure are resolved, or in public works that we need to make sure are taken care of while we're doing this. So it's not a come back at the budget time and say, oh, we have to move this or we have to do that. Let's make sure we do it right now to make sure our departments are all squared away and taken care of so we can plan accordingly, like looking at that big picture. And that's why I'm sorry if I'm beating a dead horse, or maybe I'm just not looking at what everybody else is, but I just feel like there's some pieces that we need to make sure are squared away to make sure that our chiefs and our directors have what they need to budget accordingly.
It's not done with this. That's not done with the compensation. That's done at the budget time.
But
Is that not right?
This will affect that budget.
sure. Well,
I mean,
I'm
it
not
will,
saying it won't. What I'm saying is.
unless we're gonna have it and say, no, we're not giving any step increases, which would be ridiculous.
we've had to do that.
Well, right, well, everything you're saying shows that we should not be doing that.
No, we
At
absolutely
this
should not.
point.
Right.
And so that's why I'm saying, I just feel like we don't have quite all of the information that we might need to make this as successful as possible. And I think we need to do it quickly, and we need to get to it, so we can get the people taken care of. But that's why I just wanted to dig into it more.
I just have a few comments. So I think Zach hit the nail on the head stating what we do tonight doesn't affect any pay right now. But I do think moving from the 7 to the 3 steps will help the departments, because while you had to get creative with your department, sometimes in a department when you're moving people, creeping change happens. I brought that up before.
Yeah.
So I think the more steps will help the departments, especially the fire and police department, to align everybody correctly. instead of, I don't know if you do shift pay, differential pay, when
Yeah.
a lot of places do that.
Right, yeah.
You just move to people.
Right.
That way, everybody will be even. A few more comments. I don't know if it wouldn't behoove the city to do a compensation plan in the future. Maybe we do look at police and fire separate like Tonganoxie. I don't know. But that would be in the future.
Right.
I think the information you got from the other cities is decent information, isn't concrete information. Are we comparing apples and oranges? We don't know the whole package these other cities have. We don't know the PTO, the vacation. We don't know the holiday. We don't know any of that.
Well, we did include that in the packet too.
It's
Yes,
all included.
yes.
So this
yeah,
is a very fair compensation. then.
Yeah.
So those are my comments
Right.
as far as, I think it is fair to go from the
Right.
7 to 13. That would help the departments align everybody. The fire department's got to be a challenge. They don't have that many.
Right.
Those are just my comments.
Well, I think that the other, if that's the desire of the council, it needs to be put in the budget for next year
Certainly.
to do the study.
Just a comment.
No, I mean, and that's why I say, I mean, I know that cost is going to be about the 15,000. I mean, right, we'd go out for requests for proposals. I'm just saying, and talking to the other communities and the study we had done before, which quite honestly, we got a little bit of a little bit better deal just because I knew the McGrath Consulting people from the past. But I mean, right, I mean, it was not,
that done?
I think it was 2011, I think it was $9,000. So I'm just saying, taking all that into account and others, I don't, I think that's just where you would be about 50. I mean, I'm sure you could get proposals for 40,000, but I think you could get, if you want to go through that full market analysis. The other thing we looked at in all of these ones that they've done, the people that they were looking at were pretty much the same ones, right? So this isn't like one study was going and looking only at big cities in Kansas City and the other one was only looking, I mean, the cities I listed up there for the most part were the same cities they were looking at, right? They were looking at Tongi and Baser and Bonner and Edwardsville and, Roland Parks and things. They might have gone out and touched on a UG, which, I mean, UG doesn't have a so to speak, a unified compensation plan. I mean, the way it's structured, right? They don't have a plan, but, they looked at bigger cities because I think you have to look at it to get your idea and understand. Again, I don't see us paying what Overland Park's going to pay for probably any of our positions, right? I mean, we know that, but it's good to know what that is from a scale standpoint. So again, the three studies pretty much looked at the same 20 cities in their group, 15 to 20 cities in the group. So that's good too, because that means that the comparable data, right, is common, apples to apples as much as possible. And that's why I tried to do with those positions, right? Take some positions. We know that they're common positions. I mean, right? We know, we know all those cities have police and they somehow they have fire and they all have people that work in the maintenance or public works or streets or, right. I mean, you got public works directors, they got a city manager, they got, a police chief, some of them use police major versus police captain. They may have captains and a deputy chief. I mean, so we didn't try to go out there and hit all those, what I call the kind of the outliers. It's like, these are these positions, and then looked at those other things, right? So again, we did look at, we did look at the benefits side, right? Most of the cities, Bonner Springs uses the same insurance, so we're in the same pool insurance. What they charge for their employees is pretty much the same. The other two cities had an age base, which is harder because each employee is paying a different rate. What we found uniformly is for employee only coverage, all of them paid 100%, as do we, right? So we have a plan, we call it the choice fund plan, most of our employees on, right? We pay 100% of that. If the employee wants one of the other plans as an employee only, they pay the difference, right? And that's kind of been in our program for many, many years. Our number of days off relative to, days off, are the same for vacation, sick. Baser went to a PTO plan, so, it's a little harder, but total days is the same. If anything, we're probably a little low on the holidays, so some have Christmas Eve off or half-day Christmas Eve or a floating holiday. Yeah. The only one that we do, yeah, I mean, the one that, some people, I mean, we have, I think, is it President's Day, Columbus Day, one of those. That's probably the outlier, but what we don't have is Christmas Eve. I mean,
Are there any positions that we are writing? Where you say, yes, this person's making what they should be making.
well, again, I think well, no, I think,
It's probably the council.
yeah. So if you look at, I mean, I think maintenance worker is a good one, right? So when we're hiring people in at maintenance worker, we're doing a little better than this group, right? At the bottom. Again, really where we fall off the charts is at the top. There's no way to progress past step 7. That's the challenge. And if I want to move them and I say, okay, well, I'm going to take the maintenance worker, and now they're not going to be an A. I'll move them to C to try to give them an increase, but I got to move them to C5, and then a year or two later they're capped out again. That's the problem with the steps there. We want people to be able to come in and work their career. Now that maintenance worker one someday may become a supervisor, and then he'll go to what the pay range is for the supervisor. That driver operator someday may become a captain, and right, that's where it gets a little hard on the budget because people do move. I did go look at it, and we've generally done 3% steps, right? If they're at the top, we've done 1.5 one-time payment. We've done a couple of COLA adjustments, but on average, we're probably closer to a 4.5 to 5% in payroll increase. So the 3%. I mean, you would think, oh, it's 3%. That's what I would have thought, but it hasn't been 3%. But part of that is because we've had to hire people in. Somebody leaves, and we may have to hire them in at a higher rate than when they left, even in some position. And we've also added positions, right? I mean, we didn't have a public works director in the sense of what we had there. Our finance director positions upgrade. So some of it is we're hiring people at a higher rate of pay for a job that is not the same, or we've added people, right? We've added people into our pay system overall. So that's where it gets hard to try to say, hey, if you increase the pay plan by 3%, your cost is going to go up 3%. It's not quite that simple, but I do understand the question.
If I understand it correctly, this is the tool that would allow you to do your budgeting for the 2022.
Yes.
And when are the department heads' budget due to you for their 2022 payroll?
We're probably, I don't have the calendar right, July 1, July, August. We start pay before that,
Yeah,
but
I mean, we'll start looking at pay probably here the next couple of weeks. We'll get our evaluation information from the county here in the next couple of weeks. And using that kind of gives us the framework of where we know we're working within. So over the next, throughout June and at the beginning part of July, that's when we really start to firm up those numbers.
So if we delay this, we're delaying the budgeting process and the ability for the department heads to put together a more equitable pay plan for their department.
well, I would say if I don't know what my options are, then I'm going to assume that those 17 people aren't going to get a pay raise. I mean, if I don't know whether I can,
Because
there's a
nothing,
plan.
there's nowhere to go.
I mean, I have to assume they're not going
If
to.
you
I mean,
don't
I can
know by
assume
when.
it, huh?
If you don't know by when.
Well, we don't know if an action, let's say the council doesn't move on it or decides not to make an adjustment, then we know then we know what the ceiling is for those 17 positions, and we can recommend adjustments for the rest of the pay. So we'll know. The action on this isn't going to delay our budgeting purposes, really.
Okay.
It will really just, what it does though is to Councilor Rabbit's point, it doesn't give us that tool as far as within the departments, how, with those, it doesn't give us room to move it.
So I don't think it's anyone's desire not to expand that range. And I could be wrong, I could be speaking out of line. I think we're all on board with making that range, but when I'm looking at these, I honestly, it's hard for me to understand what I'm looking at, and it's hard for me to understand from these if we're getting everything where we need to go. And that's why I think it would be worth our while to do a workshop to look at Plan A versus Plan B, unless the council's already maybe met with Mike and decided which proposal you prefer. But I'd like to look at proposal 1 versus proposal 2, get the details and look at them quickly so we can get that budget, you know, get the department heads working on that and know. But yeah, I think the goal would be to get that range moved up soon so y'all know what to plan for, but just making sure that meets all the needs. And then proposal 1 or proposal 2, which one's better to go with?
So just,
I personally do not see any benefit in delaying moving on this recommendation. There's
Which
absolutely
one?
zero benefit.
Which one did you prefer? Proposal 1
I'm
or
talking
2?
about the recommendations. It's right on your screen.
well, I think, yeah. So here, I think I can clarify that pretty quick, right? So both plans, right? So if it's an all step and grade plan,
Which is
Plan 1.
proposal 1, right? So if you're looking at the first step, whatever that hourly rate is, and then you're looking at the one, so we're talking about exempt, right? So the only difference is you're making your exempt employees on a mid, and max, right? So if I take a exempt employee, that hourly rate, if you take that number times 2080, or whatever grade that is, that's where you're at. And the midpoint and the max are the same. So if you just multiply those numbers, you're not really changing the spread. You're just changing kind of. Easy example. So if you take, let's just take pay grade in, right? So on a grade, so the first proposal is a pure grade and step plan, right? Proposal 1, right? And I'm at grade in, right? Right? That's 30.55 an hour. If I go over there and I take 63,545.35 and divide that by 2080, it's exactly the same number. You're just converting it from hours to a salary, right? Because your exempt employees are paid salaries.
Where are you getting the other number, the 63?
On proposal 2, I'm sorry, right? Proposal 2, right? We're just splitting non-exempt and exempt. Now, here's plus or minus for that, right? I mean, the good thing about an all pay class, if you're adjusting the pay, you're doing it across the board. I will say with a revised where you have exempt and non-exempt, you could do steps for one and you could do adjustments on the other of a percentage or, whatever you would do. But fundamentally, if I hired an employee over either one of these plans and they came in at grade, they were at pay grade in, they're going to get paid the same amount of money on an annual basis. One, we put in the system, we really put them all in as hourly, but one is paid on an hourly basis. And so if you take me, right, when I get my time card, there's no hours on my time card. The only thing on my time card is, oh, he had 4 hours of vacation, he had 4 hours of sick. That's all it shows up.
What
On,
is it right now?
huh?
What is everybody right now? Are they all on the?
We're basically all on a step and grade plan right now. Right. But I'm just saying, whether it's proposal 1 or 2, it doesn't really change the bounds of the plan.
My
They're the same.
question would be, for you and your department heads,
Right.
which proposal helps you meet the needs of your departments better?
I mean, I don't know that it either makes a bigger difference. I mean, the
We're in a-
step, the
we're in
step
a
and grade
step
is
now.
the step
We're in
and
a
grade.
proposal 1 now. I
Right,
mean,
right,
we're doing there.
Right.
So all we're doing is keeping the same structure.
right,
We're just adding levels.
correct. That's what
And,
proposal
and
one
so
does.
that's the simplest way to do it. And if next year we want to, if we want to look at this seriously over the next 12 months and decide what we want to do, if we want to change it to proposal 2 or whatever, but
Okay.
we're in a budget cycle right now. And if the best tool to work with for this year
Right.
is a proposal 1,
Right.
that's what I'd recommend.
Well,
And
it
if
doesn't
you-
change, yeah, it doesn't change the exempt status. They're either non-exempt or
Right.
exempt. Just like when you look at these numbers, they're based on 2080, right? So when you think firefighters, and this is true, they get paid on 2756. So if they're, for example, they're in pay grade G, right? They get paid this. So if a cop and a firefighter are in the same pay grade, one's based on 2080, one's based on 2756. The hourly rate's different, but the annual rate is exactly the same, right? That's always been that way, right? Just because firefighters work that different shift. So that, again, that's what you see in all these departments. Now, some departments use different plans. So some use 2756, some use 2812, some police departments do 412s, 410s, whatever. Across us, we do 40-hour shifts with the exception of the fire department. 2756, been that way since when 20, 30, however long it's been there. So they've always used 2756 because they've always had what they call, I think it's the modified Berkeley
So
plan.
why would we choose one over the other? I think that's the confusion here. Why do we have 2 proposals
Well,
if they're both identical? I mean, if the end result is the same,
And that's what we want to do.
yeah, just pick one. Pick a horse
Proposal
and ride
one.
it.
there you go.
It was,
Okay.
it was
No.
my suggestion, my
Right.
question, and,
I was just trying to respond. Yes,
right.
thank you.
Maintenance worker 1, I do think that we're in a pretty competitive place in the maintenance worker 1, but that's right out of high school.
Right.
And so that's where the need for the additional steps comes in, because we had a person leave last October, September, Rogers. Sorry,
Yeah.
Ray.
Yeah.
But he was in that 20-year range of experience, and he was capped out. So I think that's a perfect example, because it's a very
Yeah.
small sample size.
Right.
What happened.
Right.
So we have good employees now, but they're just green,
Mhm.
really green.
But our wastewater supervisor, as an example, is capped out. And he comes here with 20 years of experience in wastewater. And believe me, with 4 or 5 lift stations out there, it's really important to have somebody that can fix them. I mean,
That's a full-time person.
yes. He's in public works. He does other public works stuff as well, but he,
And I
yeah.
think that that's important too, to make sure that we know that person,
Right.
since you brought him that
Right.
position up.
Right.
That's not what they're doing all day, every day.
Oh, no.
They very well may be on a lawnmower.
You won't be.
Right, yeah. Yeah, no, you're
They're
correct.
not, they're
Absolutely.
not doing that specific
Right.
role 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of,
Correct.
you gotta kind of go with it, but
Yeah.
I'm ready to get past this, in my opinion. You're saying one is one.
Yes, sir. I can go either way, but
So
That's easy.
how do you want the motion crafted?
we'll
Recommend
attach
proposal
proposal.
one?
So proposal 1 will become the attachment to the resolution.
Okay,
So it'd be adopt that resolution with proposal 1 revised as the attachment A.
okay.
We'll clean it up.
Resolution 2021-06.
Yes, sir.
I'll make that motion to approve resolution 2021-06, adopting the compensation plan using proposal 1 revised as an attachment.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded, and I'm not going to repeat the motion, but anyway, the motion has been made was to follow the recommendations of the staff and for adopting resolution 2021-06 with the see the proposal 1. Okay, very good. Okay, would the clerk please call roll?
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites.
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Cahar,
Yes.
Malat.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, we'll consider resolution 2021-07 regarding requesting the Unified Government Board of Commissioners to terminate local health order LHO 42921.
I'm going to give a very brief background, so we're all on the same page. So after, I think, our last meeting, there was a request to place an action on here. So, right, as a body, you speak through your resolutions. I mean, that's the formal method. So that's what the resolution does. Again, just some background. Originally, the commissioners, the last time they met on April 29th, they adopted resolution 34-21, which amended local health order 32521. So each time they amend a health order, they create a new one, right? So 32521 was the most recent health order. They had abandoned a number of other health orders in that resolution. And that particular health order has a termination time and date of May 28th at 11:59. So they'll either choose to amend it, they can choose to continue it, they can choose not to vote, and it will just terminate. But that is the current order, and that is the order that basically continues to have a mask order piece in it that says that unless you can determine that the group is fully vaccinated, that you're to still wear masks. That's fundamentally what it says. So we're not here to give directions one way or the other. I know there's a lot of discussion about this. As you know, they are meeting Thursday. They met last Monday and had about an hour and a half discussion on whether to amend the health order at that point because the CDC had come forward with new guidelines. There was a motion basically to terminate the current local health order and go with a straight recommendation of the CDC recommendations. That's what they was put out there. It basically failed on a 5-5 vote. They then took a second vote to basically, for all intents and purposes, terminate further discussion until their meeting coming up this Thursday. So with that, that's kind of the background of it. And if there's questions, I'm sure either Lisa or I can certainly try to answer them. If they're legal questions, you may or may not need to go into executive session, but we're happy to answer questions. This resolution says three things. Number one, that this group supports repeal of the local health order. Two, that if they incorporate a new health order, so if they adopt any type of new health order or amend the one they have, that you would ask that you oppose any form of mandatory mask wearing, in whatever form. And then the third one, that basically we, like most of the communities in the region, support following CDC guidelines as it relates to health and vaccinations and whether to wear masks, not wear masks, follow the CDC. We're not adopting a health order. I will tell you, one of the changes in the statutory law now says that if the county, we can always do something more than the county, but we can't do less than the county, which is kind of true in state law overall. You could adopt a mask order if you elected to. I understand that's not going to probably happen, but understand that if you did that, then you would be liable in the sense that the state law now says that if a governmental entity passes a mask order after May 31st, that it could be subject to a business coming forth with a claim saying that they're damaged, and that be heard, I think, at the district court level. So
that's why I think it's very important that we follow
Right.
the CDC recommendations. And that ordinance wasn't a 5-5, it was a 6-5 vote is how that failed. It forced the mayor to vote. And we voted that.
well, there was one
It
absent.
was 6-5, and there was one commissioner absent, correct?
Right. So 9 of the commissioners voted, 5 5 voted in favor, 4 voted against. And then the mayor.
Voted, which made it a 6-5.
No, it was 5.
It's
If it had been 6, it would have passed.
It had to
It's
have-
5-5
They had to have
It
16.
had to have 6 to be the.
to be affirmative, right? And they only had 5. That's what triggered the mayor to vote.
4 and the mayor
Voted with the-
I'm sorry.
with the-
I mean, I watched that every minute.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
You're
that's
exactly right, yeah. The mayor made it a 5-5.
right. Had he voted with the majority, so to speak, with the 5,
That would've
then
been the 6.
then that would have been 6, and that order would have terminated
Right.
based on the motion.
Understood, yeah.
Or if he voted the other way, the order stayed in place. That's fundamentally what happened.
So are we asking them, we're asking them to repeal it, but the meeting is at Thursday, they're voting to, so we're asking to repeal it prior to Thursday,
I
not
don't
to
think
let it
that they will.
expire?
No. That's because their second motion was to not take any further action until Thursday's
Okay.
meeting. So
And so,
I don't think they
so
could
really they'll be
reconsider.
either letting it expire or adopting a new one.
Or continue, or
That's correct.
Okay.
And I think, and how I'm reading the cards, and I don't have any other information other than what I just think, that they will be asking for an extension, a 2-week extension is what I see happening. So I want to be very clear that I don't want to be involved in it at all. I want us to be let out of it. And I don't know that I don't know that we can actually, we have to ask, I understand, but I sure want to make it sound like, or that we are going, at Thursday night, we are done.
I think it would be good as well
You're
to
not.
include that statute that Mike mentioned that, hey, after May, was it 30th,
I think the
31st?
is when
That puts the county at even more of a liability. And so we would really like them to take that into consideration. And should they continue it, give us the ability to opt out, give the cities the ability to opt in or opt out. And that, I think, Chuck, would be, if they're going to continue it for KCK, it would give us the ability to not be included in a countywide mandate. And I did, just for fun, because I'm sure everyone does this in their spare time, checked the updated stats. In Kansas, of the 757 ICU beds available, only 34 of those are being used for COVID patients. And of the 798 ventilators available in the state of Kansas, only 10 are being used for COVID patients.
And I think it's important to say that if you want a vaccine, and I encourage people to get a vaccine. I got mine, I'll put it out there, I'm not, that I've gotten mine, and that I encourage folks to get it. That's your decision.
Right.
If you do it or you don't. And for us to be tied to a number that's put out there, 70%, 50%, 40%, which is the moving target every single week because of age groups that are opened up, and you can go get a vaccine if you want it today. It's all over, they're all over the place. Heck, I think they're set up in every gas station out there now. But I mean, so what I'm saying is if you want a vaccine, you sure have the opportunity to go get it. It's time. It's ran its course. The CDC has recognized that, and Wyandotte County needs to recognize it and follow how we got into this. Anyway, we went into it as the core 4, and that was Johnson County, Wyandotte County, Jackson County, and Kansas City, Missouri. We said we were going to go in together. We were sold that that's how we were going to go in, because that's the metro area, and the core 4 stayed together. And now guess what? The only one left, because for whatever reason, we are the only one that remains. Everybody else, the core 4, has now fractured to where Wyandotte County is the only one left standing. We didn't go out like we said we were going to go out. And so I think that we need to remember that the next time that we're sold, the core 4 is sticking together, because clearly we are not.
And when you're mentioning the core 4, that means a lot of folks are going to those surrounding counties and bringing their businesses outside of Wyandotte County, and the money speaks. And so our businesses in the county are hurting. And just like Chuck had mentioned with the CDC guidelines, even if we don't require masks, folks can wear them if they want to. They can wear two if they want to. You know what I mean? And that brings in more personal responsibility and personal liberty to choose for yourself the best way to protect your own health and your own family. But then we also have, you know, kids that are playing sports and going to camps and required to wear masks indoors still, when the science simply doesn't seem to follow that, even with CDC guidelines. So I'm in favor of that, of sending this on to the commissioners. I would like to, if maybe even make it a little stronger and include the new state guidelines, and ask that should they not let this expire, that they give us the ability, each city, the ability to opt out. But then to please send it to each commissioner, as well as
Yes.
the city manager and the
Yeah,
mayor.
we'll put a cover letter with it as well from the mayor's signature saying that, you know, council's adopted this, or if that's the case. So I guess my suggestion here would be, I think relative to the new statutory issues, I would put it in the whereas, right? I mean, because it's really a whereas
Yeah.
more than a statement.
Yeah.
You know, this was, Lisa and I debated, we went back and forth. This thing's gone anywhere from 1 page to 10 pages, I think, of trying to figure it out. So
I think it can be summarized fairly simple. Any action other than relieving Edwardsville. And I'm concerned about Bonner Springs also, but I'm speaking for Edwardsville.
we're already here.
Any action that is taken that other than relieving us of the mask mandate, we are opposed to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what section 2 says, that we oppose any further health orders which incorporate the current regulations, which has those, including wearing any mandatory wearing of masks. So any future order relative to this issue, right? We're opposed, I mean, you're saying in here, we're opposed to any order that requires the wearing of masks, and that you support our citizens, right? Because it's only here, that's to us. I mean, the county can do what they want. That we support our citizens to follow the CDC guidance. And, you know, and part of that guidance is to obtain a COVID-19 vaccination. Obviously, they have a choice, you know, it doesn't mandate it. It just, right, that is part of their recommendations, right?
I would like to see the word strongly removed from section 3.
From section where?
3.
Strongly removed.
You just want the word what removed, just like,
Strongly, the governing body recommends.
okay, that's fine.
And we could also add a whereas to your point with the core 4 to point out that the other metro cities have done it.
It's a great idea, Lisa.
That's why mine was 2.
Yeah. I know we won't have the full, we can't really rewrite, but I think those 2 whereases we would place in there appropriately if that was your motion, and to strike the word strongly, at least at this point, that's, if there was a motion, those would be the changes to this resolution. If there's other changes, we're certainly open, but I'm just trying to keep track of them as we go. And I think we will within the letter too, right, express, right, it's not a, but express, again, if that's the will of this group, right, in the letter, you know, kind of focus on some of those areas, right, about, you know, we want to be out of this, et cetera. So
Out of curiosity, has there been any arrests, fines, anything about anybody that's not wearing a mask?
I've heard
Handcuffs thrown on?
I've heard no enforcement.
So,
Anywhere
And that was mentioned the other night, yeah.
in the area.
Yeah, and we haven't, but even at the meeting last week that was online, they said in Wyandotte County, they're not enforcing it. He said, one of the commissioners said, we're not enforcing it. Why are we continuing this? So.
Well, and part of the problem is, how do you police it anyways?
Right.
Well, you're asking them to,
Virtually impossible to police it.
yeah, and they have to reveal HIPAA privacy they'd have to break HIPAA laws to enforce it.
I mean, I'll tell you from a city standpoint, purely from the city, right, as an organization, for that reason, and I think Lisa will concur, if not, she can say, I mean, for us to request that status in any form relative to the public, that would put us at odds with HIPAA. Now, if a
You
private
might be able to
business,
ask your staff.
Yes.
I don't even think I can
Uh,
ask the staff. I mean, I think, right, I mean, staff has the same right.
I
mean-
think they have the right to privacy as
Right.
well.
They may, not. I'm just
Right.
saying that
Right.
there's that, maybe there
Right.
is, maybe
Now,
there isn't.
do we-
Signed on the dotted line. Say
Staff,
that we're-
staff doesn't have the First Amendment. I mean,
Right.
they don't have First Amendment rights.
And, well, so I think, I mean, fundamentally, I don't think we're in a place where we could ask. Now, we could, for an employee, right, if it was something required for the job, right? So firefighters have to get certain vaccinations from time to time, or, you know, when I was an EMT, we all had to get TB tested, right? It was just a requirement. You had to do it, part of the job. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're asking an individual for medical information that would be, you know, even if it's in their employee file, right? I mean, that's still private information, right? We don't release that. Nobody here has a right to that information, right? I mean, so
I agree.
I think that's where we're at. That's the enforcement challenge.
You can't police
Right.
it.
I can't
So
tell
why-
you who has or hasn't.
Mayor Lucas said that's exactly what they said, why they, yes, you can't police it. So if you can't police it, then let's do away. And that's where we need to be.
Well, you have a resolution.
We'll get. Yeah. No, I said get with
Oh,
it. No.
Okay, so, make a motion to accept resolution 2021-07 regarding Preston Unified Government Board of Commissioners terminate the local health order. With the
Amendments
two
as well.
whereases added in the appropriate location and getting rid of the word strongly in section 3.
Second,
And here, so is this just going to the commission?
I mean, I guess once it's adopted, it's a public document. Go anywhere you
I
want
would
to.
like to see it sent to the health department,
health officials.
Van Loo, and whoever is on that,
The doctors.
the doctors, and also to Doug Bach, county administrator, and Mayor Allen.
And the commissioners, correct? And the commissioners.
Yeah, yeah. Right, yeah. We would include the mayor, but I got it, and the medical,
Yes, the
two medical
health
officers.
ones involved.
Right, got it. We will do it.
I'm going to do an abbreviated. It has been moved and seconded to adopt resolution 2021-07. Would the clerk please call roll?
As amended.
I said I'm not going to repeat everything. That includes
Yes,
that.
that's what we have, yes, as noted.
I didn't read the whole motion. But I did not exclude.
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Absolutely, yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Kahar,
Yes.
Malat.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Next
now
item
for
on
what you've all been waiting for.
Next item on the agenda, hear presentation regarding street maintenance proposed projects. I mean,
Uh-oh, we have a security alert.
Uh-oh. Howdy, cut us off.
As soon as he walks up.
That's why security left.
Yeah.
You don't think they got control?
Is my content being censored here?
it's public, but it's not censored.
Which one is it, Zach? The Sam?
Did I? Did I leave it up there?
All right. Okay, so I got a little presentation for you here. I'll try to make it quick. It's got several photos and then some explanations along the way. So I just made a few notes here on my opening page. We maintain 30 center line miles of asphalt.
sorry, this is the street update for the Edwardsville Public Works that was requested at the last meeting. We maintain 30 centerline miles of asphalt. 8 of those miles are curb and gutter currently. We're bringing more on from time to time and will in the future probably. We have 2 full-time street maintenance employees. We talked about turnover. We lost 100% of them last year, but we're full staffed again. So we had 100% turnover, but there's only 2 employees. Again, they're very at the beginning of their careers, I guess you might say. We have a sewer maintenance employee that is experienced, and that helps a lot. And then 1 full-time code enforcement officer. Here's a few major challenges, and then I just kind of went ahead and made a bullet right next to it that said some solutions that I look for or see. Asphalt maintenance is a big challenge. Maybe there's been some deferred maintenance or not a long-term plan, and it's something that I've seen that's very important as far as especially like sealing, but not only surface sealing, crack sealing, but just also the overall plan in general. Just let's get something lined out for several years. So we'll be trying to establish a routine maintenance plan. Another challenge is we have a small staff. That's not always bad either. We can move swiftly, right? And to try to combat that is some training and experience. It requires a little more hands-on for me, but I think we're making leaps and bounds progress there. Focus goals is important, trying to make these long-term goals so that the staff understands what they're going to be there for each day. Departmental cooperation, fire has been very helpful with tree clearing and practices such as those. Police department lets us know when we got things going on out there. That's very important when you have a small staff. And then contractor perform work. We will be contracting a lot of our jobs as we have in the past too. Equipment, routine maintenance on our equipment to keep up with equipment, but to keep what we've got good. We got a Google Doc now where everybody can log into there when they work on that piece of equipment. Purchase with versatility in mind. In the past, that Kubota tractor was purchased. It's since had a loader put on it, so that's a very versatile piece of equipment that we can use. So we're kind of solving that problem by purchasing those type of equipment. And then utilize rental equipment. Budget. Again, that long-term street maintenance plan kind of starts to set up a long-term budget plan and allows you to do that rather than reacting to what fails right now. And then that also takes taxpayer commitment to fund that plan and move forward with that. I had a little quote from a small town mayor there that I think relates to public works. It's not always about how fast you go, just whether or not you're headed in the right direction. I think that's important because it doesn't happen overnight, and it's about planning and putting together a program. So what are we doing now? I'll have some pictures here of some different projects we've been working on. Tree removal, again, fire has been very helpful with that. We've been using the right-of-way mower. Also, rather than just mow the trees always, we're also trying to remove them all the way back to the right-of-way line so that that tree's not growing over and we don't have to mow it every so often. We also have some tree removal that we have to do because it's in the middle of the road. That was a good picture there on the top. Street sweeping, we've been kind of tinkering with some rental equipment there to see how we can perform that. We've done some self-performing with that skid loader equipment, and probably we'll be contracting some of that in the future as well to kind of tidy it up. Crack seal program, per square yard, it's the single most cost-effective asphalt treatment available because you're sealing those big cracks. I mean, you can paint your house, but if you got an 1.5 inch crack in the wall, you're going to have more problems. So you got to get those big cracks sealed up prior to even worrying about your surface treatments. We did that with our own staff with some rental equipment. The guys did a great job. And we put down 4,500 pounds of material over about 2.5 miles. Mastic seal application, this is used, it's a high polymer, hot applied, large crack filler. It's used for those larger cracks. Typically, I think you'll see these in like a thermal expansion when your mat is moving and you get some larger cracks opening up. It seems to vary you don't always know where you're going to have them, but we had them in the River Falls area and we did those. And so far we're really liking it. So I wanted to note it in a slide here that we did it. It's a little intensive on the labor part. You can see him, he's dragging the little box. You fill the little box and then you drag it across the crack. So it gets everything full in there, but a good product, I think, that we're going to see in the future. Then there's just some specific jobs that we've been working on. Full depth patch. There's a thermal bump. There's some more still up on Edwardsville Drive. We dug all the way to the bottom to see what was down there. We kind of know what we're working with now. It was some subgrade issues, we think, and if we go back to the bottom with our full depth, I think we can come back up with that. As you can see, 230 man hours spent on street repairs over this first 20 weeks. That's a lot of hours for a small staff, 3 guys working out there. Maybe all of mine aren't accounted for, but 4th Street patch, that was a temporary patch that'll be hopefully getting major reconstruction soon with the Quiet Zone project. We tried to cover some of those really bad holes there while we're waiting. Kansas Heavy Contractors, we got an email today that was passed around that said they're hoping to start July 2021 here. That has been let to them, so there is a contractor in line for that, and they're getting ready to start. 3rd Street patch, we were either going to patch it or put up a diving board, but we decided to patch it. So it was getting pretty bad down there. So the guys, they worked with a neighboring person there to make some drainage improvements across the adjacent property, and then put a layer of hot mix over that. And that's another practice we're kind of tinkering with our equipment and our labor force. What can we do? What can't we do? These are kind of experimental things that we're playing with still. Full depth concrete patches. We've tried a couple of these to see. This is a similar patch to what BPU is using. McEnany's doing a lot of patches for them. They'll leave it 2 inches short and then put asphalt back over it. We actually just filled it flush to the surface. We don't know if we'll keep going with this, but it's something we like it because it's done. But it was a 4-hour mix. It sets up really fast, so it creates some challenges there too that we had to face. Wood end shoulder cleanup. Call Valley Sand helped us. There was some debris had collected on the road over the years, and there was about a 6-inch lip along the edge of the road that was holding water. And this was just a few weeks ago. They helped us clean that from the edge, and then we continued it a little bit further. And that's something, getting that drainage away from the road, that's important. We've spent 80 man hours this year so far trying to establish some of that edge drainage, and that's something I'd like to see a lot more of in the future too. Kansas Avenue west of 110th, we've done a full depth repair there. We use an asphalt base mix up about 6 inches and a surface mix on top of that. Essentially, this is like a full depth patch that will be, and along with those concrete patches, these would be getting ready for a potential overlay on top of it. So it's kind of what, rather than just shoveling some mix in the top of them, we're going to the base and fixing it properly is kind of our goal.
Is that work right there, is that on 110?
It's on
south, or is that on Kansas Avenue?
On Kansas going west.
So I know that we had some complaints about down 110th Street south of Kansas Avenue. Has that ever got resolved?
So I'm working with BPU right now, but I think there's a water leak there because there's a tap that crosses the road there.
I went out there and spent some time out there.
Yeah.
Several neighbors around there. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I think there is. While I was there was water coming through there.
So right now I've been trying to work with their supervisor to get their leak detection crew on it. If that doesn't happen, as soon as we get the time, we're just going to expose it and see what's there and see what's going on. So that one will be addressed in a similar method as either this or the full depth concrete is how we would look at it.
Are we not getting any cooperation, or what's the?
Just a lot of, they're very busy, I guess. So sometimes it's just difficult to get a hold of it.
It's actually pretty rough to travel right there.
It's better. I don't know if you've been there.
Are we able to put plates down so that people are able to travel that and not?
I mean, it's fairly smooth at the moment. It has some cold patch over the top of it. And then there was pictures that we got an email. They put cold patch on it one day and it was muddy, but it was like, what do? You got to get something on it. It squished right out. My cruise. Yeah. We put some cold patch over it and then it squished out like that. We got a picture in the email Zach did, I think, and shared with me. And we went out the very next day, put some more on top of it, and it's actually held somewhat now. So.
Well, if I understand correctly, there was a water leak there, a water line.
Just to the south.
Under the road, it went the full width of the road, correct?
Actually, it went the whole stretch north-south along that shoulder in the ditch. A new main was put in there. I don't know when.
And
But
then it actually went west under the.
there's taps that go west to the, yeah, so
And that right there seems like where that leak may be.
yeah, so the tap just to the south of it, maybe 50 foot to the south, where it taps and goes across, that's where they had another leak that they'd already fixed. So that's where, but yeah, I'm trying to work with them to get that straightened out. And then we'll do something like this when that happens. Would be our solution there. Other public works duties, we help with the building and facility repairs, bigger projects and stuff around PD, City Hall, parks, public works. The fire guys are pretty good about taking care of themselves, but we're always here if you need us, Tim. Mowing right away and city properties, sewer maintenance, as we said, kind of goes hand in hand with some of our guys helping. You know, it goes both ways. If we have a big sewer problem, the public works guys help there too. Code enforcement, that's part of our department, and then community development kind of goes along with that. Permitting, right-of-way permits, things like that. We do a lot of work with that. The pictures there, that was our roof over here. We got some drainage issues over here. The guys actually did a leveling patch that's helped a lot. We had a big ice berm up there that wouldn't let water off as it was melting, so we did some work up there. Contractor performed work. I mentioned that. That's something that we're going to have to utilize with a small staff, obviously, to get projects done. And there's things that are just out of our scope. The Williamson Farm entrance, that was, I know, at the end of last year, but I didn't really ever go in depth on it too much, so I just thought I'd bring that up. McConnell and Associates worked on that. I think you all have seen it probably, but they did a mill and they realigned the drainage. It's a troubled area anyway, but they put a concrete storm drain across the road, which has helped, I think. But it is a troublesome area just because the way they graded it when the original development was built. The ERP drainage pipe outfall, that was a ERP paid project, but we kind of helped them push them along. Lash Excavating did that work. They repaired the bank erosion. If you could see the first picture where it had all fallen off, and they reestablished it. And I think it looks pretty nice now. We're starting to finally get some vegetation on it. Installed riprap to try to mitigate the future problems. Wood in patches, there was a couple isolated spots that were getting pretty bad because of, we think maybe some utility work in the past or something. We can't narrow it down perfectly, but they did some patches over it and I think turned out well. They're going to do a little more work to that one on the right to actually straighten it out a little bit more. 102nd and Riverview drainage improvements. You got your before on the left, the after on the right. There was a hole in the road there, as many of us know. And I think we're happy with the project that happened there. Blue Moon Hauling, they actually come back and put a little bit of seed down. Hopefully it takes off. I don't know, we had a little trouble with that first batch if it was too cold or what happened, but
It's come up really nicely, actually.
hopefully we see that here in the near future. Riverview Crossroads, that's gotten kicked off finally. As you can see, they've got some challenges that they're facing right now with mud. But people aren't driving through there anymore, so.
Not very far.
Yeah. Yeah, but north. Yeah. Right. Okay, and that's King's Construction working on that, inspected by BHC. And now what we're planning in the future here. Again, starting with an organization, I'll be a year January 1st, or June 1st, sorry. A year June 1st. So it takes a certain amount of just getting involved in the program that's already been established, getting used to what kind of employees, what kind of equipment, what kind of budgeting you have. So we've got a lot of progress to be made yet on my experience with what we're dealing with and things, but I think we made a lot of improvements, covered a lot of ground. The planning, I think it amazes me that a lot more people don't plan like this, and a lot more municipalities. I think it's very important. So I'm excited. We put together the 6-year seal rotation where a surface seal treatment will be applied every 6 years, assuming we can stick to this plan. And so those roads right there, I do value the rating programs that we've used in the past, and I think they would be valuable in the future. But a ratings program only tells you what the road's doing. It doesn't actually get anything down. So I think a rotation plan, when you know that needs to be sealed on a routine basis, let's get a plan going. And so there will be funding required to do that, but that's something that I will continue to push for. So there's your first 3 years. And so, somebody's saying, why is not my road not sealed? Well, you're on year 2023, and then you'll be back on the next rotation. I think that's a pretty good way to be able to communicate with the public. And there's it continued. Over on the left, it kind of says a major collector, minor collector, local residential. It's just how the roads are classified. Towards the top, the major collectors are the higher volume roads. If you see, I had a 0 with the red there. So those are roads with this spreadsheet, we're able to drop some off. If it just got overlaid that year, we're going to drop it off and not do a seal that year. It'll catch the next rotation. There's the 6-year crack seal, surface seal plan. So all those roads that are going to get surface sealed, they will get crack sealed the year before that. So it's kind of hard to see there, but like 2021 is the green, Edwardsville Drive, Riverview, Kansas Avenue. Those are going to be surface sealed in the next year. So we will be looking to crack seal them this year. And some of those have been done in the previous crack sealing that we've done. So they won't all require. In fact, this year, the red section was all completed in the 2018. Mostly, we added to it a little bit. Again, you're sealing the big cracks, and then the next year, you're sealing the surface. 98th Street corridor plan. There's a lot of planning going on that project right now. The 2024 STP program year, preliminary design continues. They did finish the geotech on it. They did 22 borings, I believe, on the whole section to see what we got there. The right-of-way acquisition is in the planning phases right now. We'll be trying to move forward with some of those things. The funding was increased. Good news there due to additional federal dollars that came to the MARC organization. That committee voted to fully fund our original $4.8 million request with that additional funding. Here's just a quick synopsis of some more extreme maintenance practices as opposed to the crack seal and the surface seal. You got your full depth patching, which is a lot of what we've been trying to do, some on our own. You got your pulverizers in place or your full depth reclamation for larger failed areas where maybe one isolated full depth patch isn't the best way to fix the whole area. You need to actually kind of reconstruct that whole section. You'll grind the roadway down far below the surface, usually 8 to 10 inches, maybe more, and then reestablish the base and then overlay it with some kind of overlay treatment. And then you got your overlay, your hot mix overlay where it's paver laid. It can be various thicknesses, of course. 1.5 to 2 inch, I think, is a good overlay on a good subsurface. And it often follows the full depth patching and the pulverize in place. Routes that are requiring these practices or that we'll be looking at in the near future here, I kind of got off down to the side there, but 102nd Street, the entire stretch except for the Kansas Avenue stretch, Swartz Road, Richland, Kansas, over west, and then 110th Street. So like I said, we're trying to get some of that full depth patching done. Then we might start looking at these overlay projects. 102nd Street, we have done some preliminary design on that. We went out and took measurements of what full depth patching we have. It come up to about 1,400 square yards. There's a lot of numbers kind of flying around there, but I kind of wanted to set that up for later on when we have a little bit of budgeting numbers. That's how I came to those. And this is in the very developmental stages right now. So as we move forward with planning, we'll have some better ideas there. This is a list to show kind of, so we had the list of the seal projects. this is some of the more extensive projects going on, and then some of the STP projects. You have the Kansas Avenue in 2017 there, kind of put it on there just to show, it kind of just shows that there's a lot of roads getting touched right now, and that's a really positive thing for the whole road system. 2021 Riverview Crossroads up there in the orange, and then the 2024 98th Street corridor in the pink. That'll be coming on soon, hopefully, if everything moves along. 2024 is that program year. The Quiet Zone project, the red dots there, like I said, that should be kicking off here in July, hopefully. The 4th, 9th, 98th Street intersections of K32. And then the green is those areas that I had shown on that bottom corner of that last slide, where we'll be looking at the full depth patching and potential overlays. Okay, budget estimates. Here's kind of a layout of where we're at right now. And again, these are budgetary numbers. There's a lot of questions that will have to be answered as far as what things will be funded out of and where, but this is what we got to work with right now. Our current budget out of the general fund, just the street maintenance is 40,000. Special street is 50,000. Some of that additional is used for debt service, I believe. So that's where we're left with 50,000. The special sales tax, which will be requiring approval coming in prior to 2025, that has 100,000. And the total annual budget is 190,000. Bond dollars may be used when available to help supplement that. But then the cost estimates, as you see there, the 6-year seal cycle gets you at 170,000 a year. And then if you're doing full depth patching at approximately a mile a year, you're around 80,000. A mile of overlay, you're looking around 125,000. The full depth reclamation, I added that in there. Essentially, that should only be small sections of road, but so it kind of, that is what's going to make your total budget need a little bit larger there on some of your beginning years, especially. But so that gets us to the 300 to 400,000 a year in budget needed to keep this up. As a note, that does not include ditch cleaning, replacement of storm sewers, pavement and striping, curb repairs, or the large capital projects such as Riverview Crossroads and 98th. Those are not funded out of, those are not the cost estimates. Those are not included in there. That's just our kind of our general maintenance package that we're wanting to put together. This, like, and I noted there on the bottom, the SEAL program will stay pretty flat forever. The goal with the SEAL program is to decrease some of that full depth patching and that full depth reclamation long term. And that's all I got.
Thank you. You know, I think just to add, and Dustin's really been working on this, so, you know, it's kind of the thought processes here is, so if we can take a new road, you know, we'll use a Kansas Avenue or what, you know, so you've got that road, it's in good condition, it's there. If we can put, you know, so it's built and 6 years later you seal coat it, and 6 years later you seal coat it, and then 6 years after that, it may be a mill and overlay or another seal coat, then you're getting your roads to where you're not spending big paving dollars, but about every 24-year cycle, right? So cities that just do straight up overlay, they're generally looking at somewhere an 8 to 12-year cycle. You know, in some cities, they just all they do is mill and overlay, right? And if you got a lot of curb and gutter streets, it may make sense. But I think what Dustin's really been working on is, you know, how can we extend that life out there? Because we don't have necessarily the volume of traffic on some of those roads, but you know, it's as we've talked about before. I mean, you know, you got to take care of what's underneath it. So if you can do that, then it's easy to make the, you know, put the icing on the cake. But you got to have a good cake to start with. And so I think Dustin's done a great job of trying to get there. The other point I would make is back to budgeting. I think you can probably see pretty quick, you know, one of our fundamental challenges has been, you know, the dollars allocated versus the dollar needs to do a consistent program, right? I mean, if we're only going to have $200,000 a year, then we got to go to 9 or 10 years on a seal coat. Well, that means you're going to have the probability of more roads that you have to maintain that fail and use more expensive things. So I'll just end with my plug for sci-fi. This is why sci-fi would be an important aspect to the community, because that's what we had it allocated for in the past. And I know it has all kinds of other discussions to it, but I mean, if I think from a broad county spectrum, just like they do cars and other counties, if you can take that, 1 mil or whatever that number is and put it on roads broadly, overall, the county will have a better road system, and better roads, I think, ultimately lead to better quality of life and better business opportunities. Right? Because we found that even on our economic development times, where like when Glazers moved in, I mean, we were able to work with them to use IRBs, and then we redid Blake Street. Well, it benefited them, right? They got bottles that they're transporting, and that was literally that was one of their concerns was, our trucks are going to go down this road and bottles are going to break and we can't afford the loss, right? It was benefit to us because people wanted to go to our park and they had to drive on this old rough road. It was a win-win. So I think those are really good. And again, I want to thank Dustin for
these seal
putting up
programs
with me.
work.
So
I'm 100% believer that a seal program is very important. I mean, you can buy a new saddle every 10 years, or you could oil the dang thing and it'll last forever, or boots or whatever you want to talk about. Those are maintenance activities. You're crazy to just go buy a new one. You're not keeping up and doing the right thing. So.
Thank you very much, Dustin. Okay, the next item is city manager's report.
Well, Mayor, I don't really believe I have anything to add. I was going to bring up, they are working on 110th Street. It's a little messy up there, but that project, and again, I think it was noted, we got the additional funding on 98th Street. So we will be working. I really want to get the right-of-way acquisition process a little earlier on that one, because hopefully we can maybe push that project to late 2023. I mean, the federal fiscal year starts right October, and I think we want to be prepared to, kind of turn the key on that one, even if we have to early fund it a little bit. I mean, to get it done early if we can do it. And I think BHC is doing a great job on helping us get there. And again, we've incorporated pieces of the whole road, and we have that draft report, and they came and kind of gave some concept, but we have the draft report. Again, that's really a more guidance document. So lots of things going on, and I'll leave it with that, and I'll answer questions if there are any.
Zach, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on to the council reports. Stites, we'll start with you.
Thank you for helping to understand a little bit more on the compensation plan there. And I'll tell you that it is confusing for me because I don't work in that area. Haven't been well versed in it. So I appreciate the work you put into it. Along with the road, that's in the road improvements and stuff. It's important. And you guys have heard me preach on it for quite some time about the roads and how, either quality of life, and I think Mike said the quality of life improves with our streets. If you're able to travel the streets safely and feel comfortable and not worry that it's too narrow or rough, or where you feel better about traversing our city. And I will be talking with the council more, the rest of the council, about maybe trying to improve that street repair and street maintenance dollar amount. Along with, I do think that sci-fi program was important. We needed it, and it was taken away from us, and we weren't involved in any discussion about why it was taken away and what we got in its place. I don't think it reduced our amount that we were paying to the county when the program left. So we need to be look at that also again. Where are we at as far as trash go? With the, and I I'll tell you why it's fresh in my mind is that there looks like we mowed north of Riverview today, on 98th Street. And, I'm glad that we mowed, but we turned 100 pieces of trash into 3,000 pieces of trash. And, it would have been easier to probably pick. You can't see it all. I know grass was tall. I get that, but we have been talking about trash pickup for years.
Right.
And where are we at on that? Getting some help with either community groups, community service, hiring a bunch of billy goats to be tied to a string, tied to the posts out there underneath the trash. Where are we at?
Well, we were, and I'd really, Zach was really, we had planned on this past Wednesday, we had a cleanup day that was really a group of staff and volunteers to get out there and hit those sections, including the one you're talking about. Weather didn't service well. I don't really have an update on court unless Zach has any.
No real update, but that, it all kind of plays into it. So we're going to reschedule that litter cleanup event for 98th Street, probably in early June. And that is going to be kind of our one of the vessels that we use for on the court side of it when they are either sentenced to or elect to participate in some cleanup activities. The idea is we'll have regular cleanup events that our staff is participating in, and these defendants are coming and assigned to those days, which kind of addresses the supervision question that we had in the past about whenever people are out there doing the work. Not totally dissimilar to some of the community policing type activity over in KCK.
So,
Thank you.
The road closure at 110th and Riverview. There was a tractor trailer this evening,
okay.
about 5 o'clock, 4:45, I think. Turned off of 102nd Street, turned west on Riverview, and went past the first road closure sign, got all the way down to where the pavement, where they filled up the pavement, and then backed up and then tried to turn around in some people's yard. Tractor trailer, and got stuck. There was a very large tow truck out there. While I was up there looking at it, there were 2 cars that came from the west at 110th and Riverview, heading east. And just to along like Riverview had never been closed or there wasn't any issue at all. Now I know that eventually goes away, but I've watched people move the barricades. They're driving around them. They're paying no attention to the barricades that are up right now. Tractor trailer shouldn't have been going down Riverview to begin with.
Right.
So although it has to be done more up there, but that's what's going on.
But we'll get with the contractor too. I mean, I know they don't want that traffic through there. I mean, we're trying to be, how do you keep people that live up there access to their homes, but then other people are taking advantage of that too.
Yeah, this is down past west. I mean, this particular incident wasn't, but west of there where it's a construction site.
Right.
There's people just driving through, and I know just west of 110th and Riverview, on the north side, there's cars pulling in driveways there all the time. And coming south on 110th Street and turning in. A lot of cars just coming off of I-70 or north on 100, north from 110th Street, just going down to Riverview and deciding that they want to go right or left. And still, like nothing's ever changed.
Right.
So, I don't know what.
Okay. Well, we'll get with the contractor and KDOT and, maybe it needs additional barricades. Maybe they need to dig a deeper hole. We can do local law enforcement. I mean, maybe a combination of things. So,
A lot of different things that can happen. So, just passing it on.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm sure that the people that they're, if you guys get an opportunity to look, I got some photos, but I'm sure it did some quite extensive damage to those
Right.
folks' yard up there. I mean, it's only been raining for,
Right.
you know what, 2 weeks. That yard shouldn't, I mean, shouldn't have been an option to turn around. Is it?
No, no.
But they sure did. So Justin, when you're talking about tool rental, and what we have, what we don't have, what's our kind of our policy, or how do we go about asking or requesting use of county tools? And I mean tools, I mean equipment. I don't think it should be asking for a hammer and a skill saw. But I mean, as far as any kind, I know at one point we talked about, you said that we had, they loaned us a little small dump truck or something. Is there more of that? I mean, again,
We had a lot of, their maintenance supervisor, or maintenance fleet manager. I worked with him and he was able to load us a dump truck. That was, I think that was the only equipment we were gonna use, but it looked like we were gonna have a pretty good partnership there, and then I don't know what happened, but I haven't been able to get it back.
Well, first of all, you got to remember the county side of the ledger owns no equipment. All that equipment belongs to the city side of the ledger. So that has nothing to do with it.
The public works director over there, Jeff Fisher, mentioned that he wants to work with us, help us out. I have been working with fleet management, but it's been maybe just. But I don't know what we do.
Maybe I can reach out with Jeff and the two of us and see if there is maybe some kind of a more formal policy, or, you know, if there's.
Something, how could we go about, you might not have it, it might not be available. It
Right.
might be- we can't, but at least I think that should be one of our avenues that we go down to find out, for them to tell us no before we go spend money.
So last year, they were supposed to be working on some kind of a billing program where they could actually build their own departments within DUG when one department uses another department's equipment, so they could bill that out so that one department won't be covered all the time. It sounded like that was something that we could jump in on, like we would just be another department that could then pay for that service. And I think that we should, but maybe at a discounted rate, you know, possibly.
I think we're already paying.
Yeah, no kidding.
We're already paying
Right.
for them.
But it is hard to schedule equipment, loan equipment. I don't know if you've ever borrowed your brother's truck or anything, but,
One time.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, so there you go. I mean, that is.
I get it. I mean, I understand. It's not like you, but I mean, I'd like to be able to exhaust those options, you know, prior to us going to spend. Okay, last thing that I'll ask, where are we at on the meeting that we had talked about with all the cities, the elected officials, the mayors? Where are we at on that?
Well, I believe the mayor, they were gonna have their mayor's meeting and it got canceled, but that's, and I'm gonna start it up there, so.
Back up and go another round.
Yeah, they were gonna have their mayor.
Go another route?
Well, no, we'll go the same route, but we can't do it the same day because the breakfast was canceled.
They were gonna bring it
That
up
was
at their
that was
breakfast
that was
meeting
going
and then
to
it got
be
canceled.
my avenue to start the dialogue. And since we didn't have that breakfast, we have to have a breakfast another time, either that or send a letter. And I would prefer to have a personal dialogue rather than a letter.
When is there a breakfast schedule?
They have not said when it's been rescheduled. But we always have one once a month.
And I believe Mr. Harrington had been out of town, so I don't know about for that meeting, but I know he
Yeah,
had been.
well, he had to go to Wichita last Friday.
Okay, I didn't know. That was kind of the course we were going down, to let the mayor, since the three mayors meet and start the dialogue and where we were going, but obviously it got canceled, so.
If that is the way, I mean, if that's still the direction that we think that we need to be going, fine. I mean, but if we think that, you know, if that may get, you know, postponed or put off another month or another month, you know, what happens? Somebody has to mow the grass and, you know, who knows what election season coming up, who knows? I'm just saying, the sooner the better. I would like for that to, because I don't think that it is something that's gonna happen as soon as we ask.
No.
Ask for it, you know. I think it's going to be quite a challenge to get it all coordinated. So, which will be time consuming.
Okay. Margaret?
So a couple of things. Dusty, thank you for that presentation. Very helpful, good goals, but like Chuck said, we've got to work on our budget. It sounds like a great plan. And as far as the compensation too, thank you for more explanation. I do work in that field somewhat, but every city, every business, every organization, every employer is a little bit unique.
Right.
You know, we've got to pay our employees. And if in the future, I don't know, next year, I think it only behoove our city to do our own compensation plan. We may be missing something. I know comparisons are comparisons.
Right.
We might find out a few new things. So,
Sure.
and maybe a workshop would be helpful for all of us. Not to say that I think it would be very beneficial. Like I say, I kind of know enough about it to be dangerous, but there are some people that don't deal with it. So
Right.
that probably would be helpful. The northeast corner of 4th Street,
Yes.
are we going to, that grass get higher?
Yes. I think we have,
The letter went out today, I believe.
yeah.
Today?
We-
We start their clock to get it.
And we've told them we're only giving them one notice.
We've been-
I don't think they've cut it yet this year.
No.
And that's just not fair. It's awful.
No.
And that goes to the property in
They
between
get
the
both
grocery
properties.
store and the
Yeah.
dollars. General, is that the same owner or is that?
Yes.
It is. It's just ridiculous.
And we
there's-
go
rain
through
is
this
not the
every single
excuse.
year.
You know, rain is not the excuse. So,
No.
okay, as long as you're on that. Citywide cleanup, Zach, you're hitting 500 on rain. If we want it to rain, we'll organize a citywide cleanup. I would like to, it was fun. I mean, it didn't rain, it wasn't a total washout.
Yeah.
Fire and police department, we can't do it.
Yeah.
Thank you to the firemen and the fire and police departments for being there. They did a lot of the heavy lifting. And Dusty running the machine.
Yeah, that helped a lot.
He did.
That helped
He did.
a lot.
He
That
did.
was,
Exactly.
that was one of those pieces of equipment purchases, that grapper we bought this year.
Right.
I
for-
told them we really used that.
Yeah, I had my doubts. I will tell you, I was like, really, we're gonna use this?
Did the bins all get filled up?
I believe they all did get filled up. We still have 2 e-waste containers. So we're gonna, 3 got filled up out of the 5. We're gonna hold on to those, advertise another kind of week of e-waste drop off for people who get a chance to do that. I requested weights from Casey Disposal so they can let us know exactly how much we collected. And I've gotten 4 of those back. I don't think I've gotten all of them back yet. Once I get those, I'll send them to everyone. And on the scrap, we filled up, we requested 2 and filled up an additional 1 because of extra items that were dropped off on Sunday. And I will also just like to commend Casey Disposal, who typically Waste Management, whenever we had them partner in the past, would leave containers out on weekends. Casey Disposal was very good about getting those removed on the day of the event, so they didn't encourage a lot of that piling of materials that we typically see. So I do want to thank Casey Disposal for getting on that as well.
Last, any more feedback on our sign location? Good, bad? I know I've seen the comments, but
It's not
I think
going to
there's
be
mixed.
mixed.
Pardon me?
It is mixed reaction from the corner of the social media. I don't have a formal report to give you at the time.
Okay, just curious. Are you going to set it anywhere else? Any ideas?
I don't know where. Yeah, I don't know where that would be. right at
Obviously
the
not
moment.
110, but.
Yeah. I mean, that's one option for the future, but that's
Right.
down. Well, maybe, maybe,
Stop.
we need to move it anyways, but yeah, maybe that's it.
I mean, I don't know if it gets moved to some other, maybe people will like it. I don't know. Maybe down K32 further. I don't know. Just, I guess, give them some options.
Dusty and I were, after the cleanup day, took a little, a little sit down time, and he pulled it up because he could, you could do it from your phone. And we came up with a lot of ideas to put on the message sign, but we decided drive safely was probably the most appropriate of our choices.
That's all I have. Thank you.
I would like to, if I may say, thank you for your help with, I called
Oh.
you about the compensation stuff and some of the information you sent helped me, put this together. So thank you
Oh,
for that.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. Garrett?
I was, Mike, the other day I had said something or asked you something about the next round of CARES Act funding.
Correct.
And I think that I mentioned to you something about maybe studying installing sewers
Yes.
on west side of 110 across from Williamson Farms, north of the Methodist Church. Would that be something that would be possible to be studied, to try and ask those people if they're interested in that, however that worked out to do that? I think anytime, you said that some of that money could be spent for that.
Yeah.
correct?
So the ARP, as it's called, the American Recovery Plan, and we're still trying to figure out, it's an odd thing, but we're not on the list or weren't. And so the money, as I told you before, goes for us because we're a non-entitlement city. The money goes to the state, and then once they get it, they have 30 days to give it to us. And then we have until, I believe, December 31st, 2024 to expend those funds within the program guidelines, right? And one of those areas that they specifically highlight is sewer, not roads. I mean, they're very specific, no roads, but sewer or utilities seem to be ones that they are focused on. Clean water, right? Sewer. So there's some more information in there for broadband, though. We're working on the broadband through that UPN project that the county put together. That comes down 98th Street, connects our buildings and goes over to Bonner. But yeah, I think areas where sewer is needed, an area like that, the problem is most of those lots you couldn't get a septic permit there today in that area. It just wouldn't happen. And we looked at sewer in the past, and just on an individual basis, it was just like way too expensive. So,
Well, could this relieve some of that?
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So could that area be connected? And we can do some preliminary dollars and cents. It's not a large area, but it's not unlike, I would even say the area, High and 7th Street area. That's another area where you have a lot of properties that shouldn't be on septics, but that's the only option. Anywhere where we have density, right? You have less than an acre, you really shouldn't be on septic systems, right? Now, I realize we probably have lots of properties like that, but you can't run a sewer to one here and go way up there.
We
So
could be proactive on that. If there's some money available to do so, why wouldn't we at least study it and look at it?
I think sewer should be one of the areas we focus on.
I think that would
We
be
think
one
we
good
might
place
be
for that.
somewhere in that $800,000 to $900,000 range of ARP funds. And I'm not saying it should all go there, but I think sewer is one of those areas we would want to focus on, or at least
that
look
would be
at.
very important.
I will have it,
For those residents.
put that on the list. So.
And then I would like to, I remember at the last meeting, Chuck Adams had said something about the engineering study. I'd still like to see some progress on some studies for new buildings down here for the staff, the fire, police, city hall and all that. I think that we really need to get going on something there, with all the other things that we're doing. I think we need to do that. I wanted to, Margaret took it away from me, but she would before me on the thanks to the fire department staff, personnel, and police department personnel for I call it trash day, but for the dumpster days, it's very much appreciated that those guys show up for that. Really, I can't do it anymore. I used to be able to just throw that stuff in there, and I can't do it anymore. So the claw thing on the.
You're getting pretty weak there at the end of the day.
Now I'm not going to ask them to buy you what you need. He just broke your plate.
No more claws for you.
No, I appreciate everything that you did. I know a lot of that's above and beyond the call of duty, but it's just appreciated that that's done. he needs a crescent wrench,
Left-handed metric
a
or standard?
left-handed adjustable metric end wrench that will fit the hydraulic line
Okay.
instead of fence pliers.
Yeah. They work.
Okay, cowboy. Any news on Quiet Zone? Do we need to contact the
No, we're,
the county people to see if they can
contracts let,
formulate some kind of a letter from Wyandotte County that we have this money set aside for quiet zones? Edwardsville has been doing what they need to do, and the railroad is dragging their feet on this. Is there any way we can put any kind of pressure on from higher up than us?
well, we're supposed to have a pre-bid meeting between June, what was it, 9th and 18th, I think they were gonna try to, or pre-construction meeting. And early July start, and we're gonna,
UP or something else?
the contract.
They've already let the contract.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
contracts let, money's, yeah, it's
Because
all,
on the personal note, living by a private crossing that they blow their whistles on,
yeah.
it is absolutely unbearable the way these trains are blowing their whistles all the way through. That might be more of a personal thing,
Right.
but it's also a horrible nuisance.
Well, Fourth Street, and I don't know how they'll start, that's part of the, I mean, Fourth Street from amount of work has the most work associated with it. Because we're rebuilding the street in its entirety in that area, right? So the rest of the intersections, basically, they'll put, they'll build a median basically on top of the existing asphalt. And they may have to add a little asphalt shoulder, but that's, there's not the amount of work being done that will be at Fourth Street. So
I'm gonna keep bringing it up.
I understand.
And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn?
While we're discussing the ARP dollars and the county and how little we get from our county, and I was gonna mention, I did reach out to them and ask them about sci-fi, and sorry, I think I'm getting some feedback here. Our representative wasn't familiar with sci-fi at all. He didn't know what it was. And so I think it's a good opportunity to reach out again. Sorry, guys. And ask for that representation as well as money. And when the ARP money is coming in, to especially the countywide dollars, to remind them to please distribute that throughout the county and not just in Kansas City, Kansas. Dusty, if you can keep us, or maybe Mike, let us know if BP doesn't respond to you, maybe by the end of the week. I feel like that's unacceptable if they're not responding, and maybe we can put a little bit of pressure on. Some of us might know people in BPU that could work the back end a little bit and get that resolved, because us digging it up to try to find a leak when they have the tool to find the leak seems not necessary if we can resolve that another way. And thank you so much for the report. I don't know if everyone else is excited about all the street work that's happening. I feel like a lot of folks don't understand it because we don't necessarily see it right in front of their homes. But I love the 6-year plan. I think it's really important. If we had those sci-fi dollars, that would pretty much make up our budget deficit for streets. And so if we can get some representation at the county level, that would be ideal. But thank you so much for that report. I was going to suggest, if possible, if we can kind of leak some of that on Facebook a little bit at a time, just so we can see, okay, what have we done already this year for our streets, so the whole town can see it, and then what's coming up, little teasers, maybe monthly or quarterly. This has been done, and then this is coming up. I think people would really be excited about seeing what's getting ready to happen. I made some notes so I wouldn't forget anything. Computer lab, I know we've talked
Yes.
about that before. It is something that could benefit the whole city. A lot of the folks in Edwardsville have terrible internet service. We don't have many options at all. A lot of us don't have any options. It's one service, you get what you get. And so if we had that option to use maybe existing buildings in the city that, as we're talking about, maybe updating or upgrading our police and fire, then we could use maybe an old police building for a computer lab or something along those lines. But I think that would be something to consider as this dollars come in, especially since they're not as much on a timeline as the CARES Act dollars, where it gives more time for planning. And the last thing I was going to mention is the Memorial Day. Oh, I'm sorry, two things. Memorial Day service, anyone who hasn't made it to that cemetery service, those folks do a fantastic job. They put a lot of effort in, and it's worth the time to go. And then I just wanted to congratulate the police department. I noticed in this report they received the 2020 Lexical Connect Gold Award for excellent in law enforcement policy management. And I thought that deserved to be mentioned. Congratulations on that, and thank you for your service. That is all I have.
So Ms. Cahar, I just would really for the whole group. So the UPN project, as we call it, so the county, I'll call it CARES Act 2, put in for a grant that was about a $3.5 million construction project, which basically connects fiber, the county's fiber system, right, down 98th Street, Wood End, back around, comes by here, goes up to K32 over, picks up Bonner Springs, and then goes back up towards State Avenue and connects. I've got a, broad thing, and the benefit of it is it ties all of our police, Bonner's, police fire facilities together, right, through fiber. It for us will connect almost all of our lift stations, which I know most people go, who cares, but having accurate data in a timely manner can be really important. And so that project is still ongoing. It's a $3.5 million project. About 2.8 million of it is funded through a grant. And then the other 700,000 has to come together as a group to figure out how that's going to get funded. One idea is potentially use county ARP dollars to do that. Otherwise, right now, I think that the cities and the school district are looking at some kind of a cost share. I think I brought that up before. But the other benefit to that is then that brings in to our buildings physically fiber into the building, which then, right, gives that opportunity for something like a computer lab where you're actually connected to the fiber. Now, I don't know all the technical details, but our IT guru, Mr. Mathies, his second job, as a lot of us have, knows a lot more about the technical pieces of it. But that's a program kind of being driven through the county or through the UG. But we're trying to figure out all that. They've actually started work. You may have seen work on 98th Street where they've been installing fiber. So they came and got their permits and everything for us, and so they've been moving forward. But that would certainly help relative to a project like a computer lab to have fiber as the connection, right?
Would you mind sending us each an email just with the project, the information about it, so then we can reach out to our commissioners and even the whole commission at the UG and advocate for getting that out of the county fund so it's not out of our general.
Well, I think one of the things that it does, part of the reason why I mentioned it, because the ARP funds for the UG are broken up between city and county, from entity wise. And really the funding they're putting into it's really on their city side of the equation, and same for us. And then the school district's looking at it as well, because it does connect all the schools, including here. But if you could shift those and not spend those dollars for that out of local funds, even if it's old CARES Act dollars, well, that money can stay in KCK, stay in Bonner, stay in Edwardsville, right, and be used for city projects, uses, et cetera. So that's kind of what we're trying to figure out a way to do that. So, and I didn't have it on my report, but I'm just going to mention it since we're talking a little bit about cooperation. So we did meet today on a transit called it's a micro transit program that we're trying to kick off with our local business park. Been something, right, getting people to work. But what we're looking at is not just getting people here to work, but people from here to another place. So the micro transit would basically connect at the Walmart location, and then they would come from the Walmart location down to Edwardsville, so the Walmart up at the Legends, right? That's because you've got 3 separate transit stops up there. You got the Max one, and so it would allow people to literally get on, and we're looking at maybe a couple business stops. It's kind of focused around the business community, but also maybe our nursing home and here at City Hall. So you could get on here, take the transit up to the, you know, the 101, I guess is the big one. And then, right, whether you worked or whether you need to go to community college or whether you need to go get your tag or you just wanted to go up and shop. You know, we have people that just don't have transit as an option. So it's a 1-year pilot program. And so the city, county, and UG putting in money, Wyandotte EDC is going to put in money. I think we're going to match some money with our local businesses through our economic development fund or through CARES, you know, former CARES dollar. But that's a program we'll probably be bringing forth pretty soon too. It's pretty early. We just got the brief on it today, but it's got a fairly short term.
Free usage?
Free usage. Yeah, there'd be no, at least initially, that's the plan so it wouldn't cost the person traveling on it anything, right? And so and again, they can connect to the full, then you can connect to the full transit systems, right? I mean, if you work in downtown and that's how you want to go, or people from wherever coming into our city to work. But when they first brought up, it was more like, how do we get people here to work? And I'm like, well, that's great, but if we're already bringing them here to work, why can't we turn it around and go the other way and help citizens here? Maybe their job is at the Legend. Maybe their job is at 78th and State. Maybe they're, that they want to get to the community college and they have all those stops, right? So I think it could be a really great program, but we literally just got it today. I should have said something earlier. But it's another opportunity, I think, for the city and the county to kind of get together and provide an option to our citizens as well as people that need to work here. So good for our business, good for our citizens.
I think it would be really wise in planning that to keep our police chief in the loop,
right,
and planning those locations for those stops,
right,
and just research crime in
right,
areas of the stop locations and where it would be best locations so that we can make sure.
And it's really just by my trainer right now. I mean, it's going to be an electric vehicle. I mean, they're actually kind of a door-to-door service, really, right? So once they pick up there, it's no.
Oh.
So businesses, so they'll, if my business participates, they'll come bring people to my door. We're just saying we may want to have one spot, say here at the city hall or whatever. I mean, right, we think the nursing home, they have a lot of employees that come there. So, I mean, it's not so much that there's not very many people that live there that want to take transit somewhere, but right. But I mean, people that work there. And again, if they're already here, why not then give them an opportunity to get back up to the ledge? Say, I just want to go shopping. Right, I don't have a car, and I don't want to go I want to go grocery shopping. My only options is Dollar General, but you mean I can get up to Walmart and go shopping or Costco or whatever. I think it's a great opportunity for citizens to have another opportunity and limited public costs. I mean, the whole thing is there has to be a private piece to it. So that's what we're looking at is a matching kind of situation with our local businesses and us and Wyandotte EDC. It's really been driven through Wyandotte EDC because they keep hearing employers say, we can't get people here. We need weighted transit. So it's kind of driven from that side, but we're also saying, how can we use it for getting people there? So not transit stops like in a traditional transit bus stop, right? Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Going last, you get to check off things like encouraging you to use the county equipment. Our taxpayers pay for it. So whether it's the city, whether it's KCK's or not, it's still our equipment it's KCK's equipment that's being used in the county. I want it used in this part of the county. Well, it needs to work that way. Our citizens send money down to 7th and Ann to pay for that stuff. County Road Sci-Fi. Congratulations on the award. What is it? What is the award for?
It is, we do, our policy system is computerized. And every day, any on-duty officer, you have to train on those. We call daily training bulletins. So you train on them constantly. I think that's worth over 20 hours of training for post-certification every year. Partly why that's restricted, because we do a lot more than that, is because the state law doesn't allow more submission of online training than 20 hours. They've relaxed that a little bit since COVID, and hopefully that will stick, because some of that's been, the quality of online training has actually increased some, and
it's fairly convenient. It's pretty cost effective. But essentially, we have an entire mechanized policy system, and we manage it every day, and it has to be trained on every day. And when we make adjustments to it, that's distributed, it's acknowledged. So it's a whole pretty robust system. And we were the 6th police department in Kansas to use it. And we were the smallest, second smallest at the time, I think, something like that. So it was one of the things when I was the chief, the president of the Chiefs Association, that company is called Lexipol, really got a lot of momentum in those years. And the Chiefs Association got behind that. So I think there's Olathe, there's several that have joined since those times. But essentially, we have managed it in such a way, we've got the gold award, there's no better award. So they recognized us as an individual agency who managed the policies, distributed them, educated folks on them, and then did it again. So that's what we did.
I would add to that, so we were an early adopter, but it's also one of those programs that came through MPR, right? So that's does our health benefits and our property liability, and they help to fund some of it. It's not 100%, right? But so we get credits through safety credits, and so we use some of that to help offset this, right? And for those that have been to the MPR conference, and I can never remember the guy's name, the original founder, but he was from the California Highway Patrol, kind of started this, and it was all on that concept, right? I mean, how do you keep policies in front of people? And so, you sign onto your computer, and first thing up is a policy, and you have to, read it and accept it. And so it what keeps us out of liability, right? That's really the fundamental piece of it. But it's also part, I mean, I say that because MPR is one, really first into Missouri, but then helped, with Kansas, and it's certainly grown, and they do help support it financially as well. So it's another benefit of that.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Chief Whittam there again, and Chief Mathis, and I'm going to direct this at Captain Short because he was the only one from the police department there. But without your personnel from the fire department, we would not have gotten it done. So big thanks. With that, I have no further comments. We are adjourned.
Okay. I don't think so.
Good.